of a boxing match. Lots of losers, Tyson, Netflix, and let's not forget the poor Toad, whose venom Tyson smoked for inspiration in the lead up to the match. We'll talk about it all with NBC Sports Boston's Trenni Casey next on Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. A U.S. official has confirmed to NPR Ukraine has used U.S.-made long-range missiles in Russia for the first time. Russia has changed its nuclear posture today. The country may now consider using nuclear weapons if it is hit by a massive air attack. NPR's Juliette Kayyem reports the actions come as Ukraine is marking 1,000 days since Russia invaded the country.
A U.S. official told NPR that the Biden White House lifted restrictions on Ukraine's use of these missiles earlier this week. Meanwhile, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky marked 1,000 days of war in a speech by video link to the European Parliament.
No one can enjoy calm waters amid a storm, and we must do everything to end this war fairly and justly.
Russia is making steady territorial gains in eastern Ukraine and now occupies roughly a quarter of the country. Joanna Kakissis, NPR News.
European officials are investigating how 2 undersea communications cables linking countries in northern Europe were severed early yesterday in the Baltic Sea. NPR's Rob Schmitz reports this is raising suspicions of sabotage.
Authorities say one of the undersea cables connected Finland and Germany, and the other connected Sweden to Lithuania. Finland's state-owned cybersecurity company Cinia said, quote, Europe's security is threatened not only by Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, but also by hybrid warfare by malicious actors. The damage to the cables came the same day President Biden authorized Ukraine to use long-range U.S. weapons against Russia. Officials say the data line damage has so far had no noticeable impact on communications and will take up to 2 weeks to repair. Rob Schmitz, NPR News, Berlin.
World climate talks continue in Azerbaijan. NPR's Alejandro Barunda says this comes as climate scientists warn global warming could soon reach a point where weather events could be far more destructive.
Scientists are also worried about these phenomena called tipping points. That's when the climate system passes some threshold beyond which it just behaves differently and could run away from us in ways that could be really self-destructive. The ice sheets have some of these tipping points, for example, and if they melt too much, the process can become self-reinforcing and maybe send sea levels up by many feet.
NPR's Alejandro Barunda reporting. Democrats in the House of Representatives have re-elected New York Congressman Hakeem Jeffries as minority leader. They've also returned his team. Massachusetts Congresswoman Catherine Clark is Democratic whip. California Representative Pete Aguilar is Democratic caucus chair. California Congressman Ted Lieu is vice chair. Republicans who hold the majority in the House have already re-elected Louisiana Congressman Mike Johnson as Speaker. On Wall Street, the Dow is down more than 200 points. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Bag handlers and other contract workers at Logan Airport are holding a demonstration today. They plan to march from Terminal A to Massport's headquarters with empty luggage to call for more time off and higher wages. Longtime Skycap Joe Travers says even though he's worked at Logan for 20 years, he gets the same amount of time off as someone who's worked there for 2 years.
It doesn't seem like you value my longevity with you, to say I appreciate you staying with us and during tough times, during COVID, during the housing crash, during all these times. Some employees have been there since 9/11.
A spokesperson for Massport says contract workers already make more than the state minimum wage of $15 per hour. The agency plans to consider the wage and time off proposal on Thursday. Students in the UMass system who are planning to travel abroad for the winter break are being urged to be back in the States before President-elect Donald Trump is sworn into office on January 20th. Daily Hampshire Gazette reports that in preparation for a change in presidential leadership, international students, faculty, and staff who are on University of Massachusetts immigration sponsorships are being encouraged to get back into the United States before that inauguration. In sports, the Celtics host the undefeated Cleveland Cavs at the Garden tonight. Gang Green 9-3 on the season. Cleveland is 15-0. Ouch. Sunny in upper 50s today. Clear sky upper 30s overnight. Rain arrives on Thursday. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Charles Schwab, offering investors choices like full-service wealth management, advice, investing, and trading on Thinkorswim. Learn more at schwab.com. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
Eastern Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back here tomorrow and again on Friday. And next Tuesday, we're going to be joined by the Attorney General, Andrea Campbell. She'll be with us from 1 to 2, taking our questions and yours. Hello again, Jim.
Did you do anything fun yesterday, or no, you were off?
Nothing. Oh, I went out to a nice lunch with a friend of mine. That was kind of fun. And I cleaned my closet.
Oh, that's great. That's really good. Okay.
It's great.
So when Donald Trump was first sworn in office in 2017, the pink pussy hats came out in full force. If you weren't a fan of his sexism and assaults then, protesting by caring people was expected. Perhaps it was the shock of his first win that prompted a resistance coalition to form. But now in the wake of Trump's second win, this time more resoundingly, where he again defeated a woman, established real threats to women's health, are you trading the pussy hat take to the streets resistance for a nice roll back and forth in the fetal position or just a glass of wine? The lines are open at 877-301-8970 to call or text. We want to know how you're feeling about the so-called resistance under Trump 2.0. No matter the issue, especially as Trump spent the last weeks of the campaign ramping up violent rhetoric, framing Democrats and journalists as the enemy within. It appears to me and Marjorie that the reaction so far is, let's call it, muted. Is it because people are saying let there be blood in the streets and the voters who put him in office will see how wrong it is? Is it exhaustion? Is it we just can't do this for another 4 years? Or are Marjorie and I, anecdotally, and that's all we've got, totally wrong, and is a serious resistance forming, and will take on the excesses of Trump's second term? By the way, marginally is not a verb. I misspoke. She was out a day. One of our coworkers mentioned the marginally thing. I think people knew that I was sort of talking about you. 877-301-8970. Let me give you, I mentioned it's anecdotal, our feeling that there isn't a real resistance forming. There's a great story in the New York Times about a week ago. Nonprofits vow a new resistance. Will donors pay up? And the answer is no. They talked to some of the most prominent nonprofits in the country. One exception may be the Civil Liberties Union. When Carol Rose is here with us soon, the head of the Massachusetts chapter, we'll talk to her. But virtually all the nonprofits which in the past have led opposition to extremism and plan to do it now, say almost no checks are coming in.
Yeah.
The donors are few and far between, which suggests to me, I don't think most people are saying, let him do what he wants and then people will see what they bought. I really think it is exhaustion. I think it is. I just don't know if I'm not speaking for me. I don't know if I can do this again for 4 more years. I did it once. I did it leading up to November 5th. And I guess we failed,
Well, you've read a lot about how liberal outlets like MSNBC, the ratings plummeted after the election. I was listening to my favorite podcast, The Daily from the New York Times, which is a great podcast, interviewing some women who talked about being down at the march in Washington. I went down there in the march.
Last time?
Yeah, on the train that Seth Moulton ran out of Boston. We all had our little hats on, and it was massive. It was 450,000 people. Now they're talking about doing a People's March on Washington on January 18th, right before Trump's second inauguration, Women's March Group, Abortion Access, Planned Parenthood. But they're only expecting 50,000, so that would indicate a lot less enthusiasm.
So what do you think it is? I was telling you what I think it is. I'm not sure that I'm right. What is it?
Just the people in my life, especially the young people in my life, they've deleted apps from their phones. They're not looking at the news like they were, because I think that they're upset and depressed and not really sure what to do. And I think that the Daily podcast was arguing this morning that one of the women that was very involved in the Pussy Hat March and really revved up last time around felt as though it didn't do any good. because a lot of the upset, the first time around, 2016, was about abortion rights and about Trump being an accused sexual predator. And now we have like a sexual predator smorgasbord. It's going to be the president,
half of his cabinet,
and Gates, and this guy, Heggs, whatever his name is.
Marjorie.
Yeah. So there's a sense that things didn't get better on that front. They're getting worse. So, but again, it may be that you have to wait until till Trump is in office and starts doing some bad things.
I don't agree. I mean, you just said it. There's three. I mean, Donald Trump, a civilly concluded sexual predator,
right,
has nominated two people who credibly are accused of sexual predation.
We're going to talk.
I would argue there's enough on the table to respond to.
We'll talk about this again later in the show, but what we learned last night from the attorney who represented the young women involved in the Matt Gaetz case, that one of them watched him having sex with an underage woman on a pool table at a drug-fueled sex party. I mean, once upon a time, remember that poor guy Ginsburg who had like 2 hits of pot?
I mentioned this on the air the other day.
He was thrown off the Supreme
Court. And how about Zoe Baird?
Zoe Baird, didn't pay
Attorney General
taxes for her nanny at a time when I think most people, and I was the one that, among them when we were talking with my other mother friends, and a lot of us didn't know you had to pay taxes for your once a month housekeeper or your nanny or something.
But even
like
if
that.
you did, how quaint compared to this?
So now you got sex at a party on a pool table at a drug-infused sex party. I mean, wow, that used to be a disqualifier, but maybe not.
877-301-89. So, well, if it's not a disqualifier for the president, why is it I'm serious. Why is it a disqualifier for his nominees?
We don't know about the president-elect being in any pool tables, as far as I know.
By the way, Lance and Lynn has an interesting thing that I left out. It isn't just exhaustion, it's fear of retribution, which I think is an interesting point. I mean, there are a lot of people who are really concerned about what happens if you speak too loudly.
And there was
especially since he doesn't have to run for re-election,
Yeah, well, maybe that's why Joe and Mika went to Kiss the Ring at Mar-a-Lago. We're going to talk more about that later, too. They're the MSNBC morning hosts. But I want to mention another angle from the same New York Times story you talked about. There's this woman who runs something called the Democracy Alliance, and she talked about how you need to get more of a diagnosis of what happened, why, as so many people have said, the Democrats have lost touch with the working class, why more Latino voters went with Trump, why these changes happen before you start figuring out what to do about it, which is not a ridiculous perspective.
I think it is a ridiculous perspective.
Okay.
I think you can do both things at once. The reality is things that are harmful and dangerous should be opposed while you're doing whatever analysis you're doing as to why we're in this situation.
But one thing that I think is going to be really hard this Thanksgiving for people that have Trump voters on the other side, if you've got young children or you've got young grandchildren, their team is the team that's going to hurt them, whether it's on climate change or on guns or on health care. Now they're talking about where they're going to make the money for Trump's proposed tax cuts by cutting down on SNAP and Medicaid.
Or huge deficits.
Yeah. So that's the thing that makes it hard to put up with if you think these things are wrong, that these things are going to hurt the people that you love. Anyway,
877-301-8970.
Lauren in Boston, thank you for calling.
Hi, Lauren. Thanks for your patience.
Hey, good morning. So I was part of the protest back when Trump first won. I will not be attending this year for 3 reasons. The first reason is that, honestly, I've had to unplug, even from your show, for self-preservation and a little bit. I need to decompress a little bit from all this.
Yeah.
I don't listen to our show every day either, by the way. Some of these segments are so depressing, right. I just totally tune out. Right. Next, Lauren.
Well, I have to say, I listen to your shows every day.
I'm kidding.
And I so appreciate your humor.
Thank you.
Humor that's woven in just makes my day. Because, and the appalled, your feeling of just being so appalled, I always share that.
What's your second and third reason?
The second reason is, you might take issue with this, but what good did it do?
Yeah.
It did nothing. And here we are today. And the last reason is, I really don't trust the radical right, and being in crowds, I'm not really a worrywart by nature, but I would have safety concerns.
I think that is a really
Yeah,
sad
Lauren,
but legitimate concern.
Yeah,
Lauren.
I think you captured the way so many people feel that you know, or the people that you read about. Thank you very much for that call.
By the way, I don't know. She said we may take issue with the second thing. It didn't do anything. I think it did do something. It could have been worse, number one. And number two, so even if it didn't do as much as you want, I don't mean just Lauren, people wanted it to do, the so-called resistance. So what's the solution for that? To stop resisting? Because it wasn't as effective as you want it to be? If things are going to be dangerous to people's lives and the people they love, then it seems to me you pretty much have an obligation to say something, do something.
Look how long African Americans fought to get civil rights in this country.
Yeah.
I mean, forever, decades and decades. So it seems as if we're throwing in the towel a little bit prematurely here. But I think for white people, this is the Trump presidency is one of the first times they felt the government was against them. You know what I mean? That they sort of had a bullseye on your back instead of we're helping to lift you up. It's a different kind of thing.
Are you going to the women's thing that Lauren, the first caller, said she wasn't going to, and she went last
January
time?
18th?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've got time to decide. Maybe I'll feel more.
Does that mean that means you're not going and too embarrassed to say it? Is that fair?
It's 2 months away, Jim.
I know, but I mean,
I don't have to
make plans?
I don't have to buy my train. No, I'm always a last minute person.
You are a last
But I'll
minute
tell you
person.
one thing. That was the best march I've ever been to in my whole
Why?
life. Well, because most protest marches, there's an underlying feeling that things might get out of control. A march that is like 90% women, no feeling like that.
Wasn't it also huge in every city around the country?
Massive,
no, not just
yeah.
in D.C.
You're going
Boston,
down.
everywhere
You're going
else.
down the highway. You can see people with pink hats on in the car next to you, and in the train next to you, and you go to the bathroom at the rest area, and half the women in there had hats on. It was really.
By the way, you should mention the separate rally that was exclusively women Trump had assaulted, and it was huge. I mean,
Okay.
it is incredible.
I think that's one of the things that's really difficult is that the Me Too movement, which we thought made such a big deal in terms of getting some justice for women that have been survivors or victims of sexual assault. Well, it's kind of right out the window when the Attorney General could be a sexual assaulter and a pool table, have sex with underage women kind of guy. Anyway, here's an anonymous texter. I think a huge difference this time is that Trump won the popular vote. It feels different, feeling like so many people across so many demographic groups actually voted for him, knowing what and who he is. It just feels different.
You and I had a big debate this morning before the show about how decisive his victory was.
It's much closer.
Yeah,
He's
but I
below,
don't think popular vote is the only issue.
Well, I know you told me. I didn't know when
contested states.
Right.
He won all 7.
But for people that may not know that, he is less than 50% now.
That's
It's
correct.
like 49 something for him and 48 something for her. But one of the things that anonymous texter brought up, and this is what I think will be really interesting to find out, how many people did know all the things that he'd done, and how many people didn't believe when they heard about the things he's done. I think that's going to be very interesting post-race analysis. Charlie from Groton, what do you think, Charlie?
Hi, Charlie.
Hey, Jim.
Hi.
I went to Penn, graduated in 71, and I sort of vaguely remember a talk about an anti-war national strike to end the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that really ever came, but I remember people talking about it on campus. Now I think we have to ask the women of America to go on strike. Because if the women teachers of America went on strike, the women flight attendants of America went on strike, and the women nurses of America went on strike, you would shut down the country enough that the change in cash flow for the jet fuel industry, people would have to stay home and be with their kids. They wouldn't go to work. And the change in medical care delivery, Congress only listens to money. So I think with all of even businesses would pressure Republican people in Congress to say, again, the voting rights legislation is there, the women's health care and abortion rights legislation is there. All you have to do is get Congress to vote on it, and also vote on it with no chance of changing it for 25 or 30 years, the way they do for some bills.
Well, I'm sure you didn't mean let the women go do it and we'll sit watching Patriots games.
No,
we support.
We'll all do it. I had my pink hat. I was there on the Boston Common.
Well,
the idea is the women who have much to, gain or much to. Again, the first march did nothing. Women's reproductive freedom rights have gotten worse. since the first March.
Let me, in response to your call, Charlie, thanks for making it. Zoe, our colleague, wrote this to us. Icelandic women, including their prime minister, did this last year. The difference being 90% of the nation's workers belong to a union.
That's a great point.
Icelanders woke to an all-male news teams announcing shutdowns across the country with public transport delayed, hospitals understaffed, hotel rooms unclean, trade union, the strike's main organizers, calling on women and non-binary people to refuse paid and unpaid work, including chores. What percentage of the private sector is in unions in this country? 6%? 7%? Private sector, that is, yeah. Charlie, though, thank you for the call. Apparently, a lot of people agree with you.
Here's, I think, a common sentiment expressed by Stephen Gloucester, a texter. I'm the furthest thing from a Trump supporter, but he won both the popular vote and electoral college. Republicans have the House and Senate now. The people have spoken. What can we realistically do but ride it out? I think that's a common sentiment. And another texter says, I've deleted all my political channels except BPR, and I'm watching Hallmark movies now. Considering if you can't beat them, join them. It's very sad.
It is. Let's take a break.
Okay, let's take a break. We're talking about what is the reaction if you are not with the program for the next Trump presidency. Are there going to be mass protests again? Or are there going to be financial support for a lot of the groups that finance a lot of the resistance? Or have you just had enough and you're joining our texters that are watching the Hallmark Channel, those movies where there's always a happy ending?
And women did not break the glass ceiling. How will this play out?
While I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign.
Join politics editor Azita Garamani for a GBH News Forum, Election 2024 Impact, Women in Leadership Respond. Tomorrow evening at 6 at our GBH studios in Brighton. RSVP at gbh.org/events.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked #1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday. And Babson College, where you can advance your career with an MBA or specialized master's at the school ranked #2 best college in the United States by the Wall Street Journal. More at babson.edu/grad programs.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/ excuse me, I have a cough drop. GBH News. We're back here tomorrow and Friday. Next Tuesday at the library, the Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, will join us from 1 to 2. Our text prompt of the day at 877-301-8970. How far would you go to get a snoreless night's sleep? Have you tried strapping tape across your mouth or your partner, sort of like a hostage? This is a legit thing, apparently. Send us your best tips to beat snoring, and we'll read them a little before the 1 o'clock news. We're talking about the state of, I guess we're calling it the Trump Resistance Coalition in 2024. It's been a couple of weeks since Election Day. Doesn't it seem like it's been like a year since Election Day? Looking ahead to January and the many chaotic months to come in a second Trump term, how are you thinking about public activism, public protests? Will you do things differently this time? Writing checks instead of taking to the streets? Or you're not even writing checks, as that New York Times story suggests. Is the so-called resistance on hold? Give us a call or a text at 877-301-8970.
Here's Cameron in Jamaica Plain. As a citizen of the United States, this is the first time in my life I felt like if I speak out online, there could be repercussions with the threats of Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Basically, it feels like they're going to create their own SS to go after people who disagree with them. I think there's a lot of that sentiment, too.
So here are a couple of good texts. Anonymous texter, women go on strike? You mean those white suburban women who voted for him?
No.
I guess so. Anonymous texter says, gay men could shut down air travel in this country with a few keystrokes at any airport, and it's time for them to just do it. 877-301-8970.
Oh, here's one more. Focus on the midterms. Protests are a waste of energy and money. I don't know.
It's
if
a
that's
long
true.
ways away.
Yeah. Remember the Vietnam protests? They didn't really pick up until the parents started.
Worried about their kids.
Yeah, the parents, middle class, 40 and 50-year-old parents started joining the protests. Caroline in Boston, thank you for calling.
Hi, Caroline.
Hi. So I'm not going to go to the protest because the protest is scheduled before the. I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback. I turned off the radio. Because the protest is scheduled before the
Inauguration.
Thank
you. That's why I'm here.
So I think that I'm going to reserve my bullets or my activism for after the inauguration, when he may call a national emergency, and there will be some jail time involved. I'm retired. I can afford to go to jail, and that is what it may take.
Caroline,
Wow.
thank you,
Caroline.
for your
Let's hope you don't
call. We appreciate
go to
it.
jail.
Anonymous texter says, a lot of my millennial peers are exhausted living through, quote, once-in-a-lifetime crises constantly. Now,
Yeah, they've got to stop calling these storms. They say this once in a 1,000-year storm, once in a 100-year storm, and then oddly enough, it happens again 2 weeks later.
But there's really good news. You read about the COP that's going on right now in Azerbaijan.
Yeah.
Maybe the first COP with no draft statement coming out of it, despite the fact that the climate is coming right down on our heads.
Half the country doesn't care or doesn't believe it's true.
Well, including the new secretary of whatever he is, energy, who says there's not a climate crisis.
I know. And the guy that's running the EPA has what is he, a 14, one of the lowest rankings possible
when he was in
from
Congress,
environmentalists. Yeah, Jenny, Rhode Island, thank you
Hello, Jenny.
for calling.
Hello, how are you this morning?
Good, thanks.
I am trying to be proactive. I have been writing senators. I have been calling the White House.
Wow.
I have been calling everybody and writing daily. I write a few letters, and I've gotten some back, very good ones, about passing the ERA.
Oh, yeah. Wendy Murphy is big on that locally, right? Yeah.
Right. No, well, yes. As I said, I'm in Rhode Island, so my senators, Jack Reed, has tried to get this passed, and it was me a very nice letter. Kirsten Gillibrand wrote me a very nice letter as well. She's been working on it forever.
Well,
you have to keep calling. You have to keep writing. We can't give up. I'm 72 years old, and I have grandchildren that I adore. I want them to have a better country than they're going to have.
Jenny, thank you very much for the call. That was a great one. Along those lines, I was reading Margaret Sullivan. Margaret Sullivan is a media critic. You know, she used to work for the New York Times, Washington Post, and stuff. And she was quoting this Princeton professor, this Eddie Glaude Jr., who wrote about his restored resolve. He said, "You cannot give up. It's tempting, but, quote, I've gotten myself together. Now I'm ready to fight for a more just world. Choose your space and get to work." So a lot of people are talking about doing things locally, getting involved locally, but Stacey in the car has taken the opposite approach. She says her sister-in-law and she are going on a cruise for 4 years.
What's the name of that thing where you go for 40 grand a year?
Yeah, for 40 grand a year.
Yeah.
That's the low rent option, but it's cheaper than apartments lots of places. So you can save a little money while you're cruising the high seas.
A friend of ours who's actually quite smart just texted and said, capital letters, he did not win the popular vote. Share this, please. Well, he actually did win the popular vote. He didn't win 50% or more of all the votes. But let me just say,
he won more than she did.
This is not just directed at this person. It is directed at all people who say these things. Donald Trump won the damn election.
Right.
He had an electoral landslide, a modest victory in terms of popular vote. What is the value of having that discussion about how much he won by?
Because we were talking
he
about
won.
it. I know, but we were talking about it as being this massive landslide and decisive
It was an electoral
victory
landslide.
and all that. I know, but I think the popular vote does matter to people, and I think it's...
He won the popular vote.
He did win the popular vote, but the initial reports of it being this huge,
true.
$10 million, and that was one of the saddest things. I mean, 10 million Democrats is not the number of Democrats who didn't
show up
to vote.
Apparently, yeah.
So maybe we can blame all those.
Couple of million fewer Democrats voted in major American cities, and a couple of million additional Republicans voted in major American cities. We have phone issues. That's shocking. We haven't had them for at least 24 hours, so we can't take your calls.
Here's a text.
For a minute. If you want to call my cell phone or Marjorie's, we'll try to get you on the air.
I refuse to let Trump steal 4 more years from my life and revert to being on high alert the way we were when he was last president, watching 6 hours of news every day for any clear present danger. I plan on being economic and strategic about where and how I resist, but also prioritize my own lifetime and priorities. Why should I give up any more of my soul for a rapist? Well, it was adjudicated in a civil case that he raped somebody, but it wasn't a criminal case. But by
the way, while I am criticizing people who are saying I'm going to sit this out, I have to say, in the spirit of honesty or self-awareness or whatever that word is, I have to say I'm watching. CNN is my channel of my cable station of choice. I'm watching a lot less in the last couple of weeks since the results came in. Are you?
Well, yeah. Yes.
I wasn't even conscious of it until I just thought about it.
Because last time, and I said this before, it was like he woke up every morning after Trump won in 2016. Woke up every morning. What did he do overnight? What new horrible news can I look at? And it's just too depleting, I think. So I get why people want to limit it, but a lot of people are saying in the text that they think that people's outrage quotient and ability to sit by and do nothing could end when things start happening, like horrible pictures of deportations.
I hear that. I mean, how much worse can it get than the nominations? Tulsi Gabbard is credibly a Russian asset. And we didn't even mention her because there are too many of them.
It's like
and she's going to be the director of national intelligence. Oh, well, let's wait to see what she does when she sends this trove of information to Vladimir Putin. Then we'll really get angry.
It's like a confederacy of crackpots.
It really is. Why we're not going to disclose the ethics report is because of precedent. He is out of Congress. And Jake Tapper just calmly says, well, actually, that's not true, Mr. Speaker. There are two examples of where someone was out of Congress and they released the report because it had begun before. And there's actually a third example of an ethics investigation that didn't even begin till they were out of Congress. And you know what Mike Johnson goes? I mean, it doesn't even matter. I mean, it doesn't matter. By the way, shockingly, the phones are working.
Oh, the phones are working. So let's go to Lewis and Brighton.
Thank you for whoever
calling,
fixed
Lewis.
them, too. Hi, Lewis.
Hello, how's it going?
Oh, boy.
Hello.
We're going to put you on hold for 1 second.
It's still not working.
Don't go away.
Okay, anonymous texter says we're grieving. It's only been a couple of weeks. We will stay focused and regroup. And I think that's a lot of it too. You know, you kind of gotta.
No, you don't.
Okay. What are you doing?
What am I doing?
Yeah, we're on the radio.
I'm talking on the radio, encouraging my fellow outragees.
Oh, listen to this.
To do something.
Listen to this. Listen to this person.
We're sorry. We just hung up on that person.
I don't spend money because the phone wasn't working. I don't spend money in red states. I am now divesting my retirement portfolio from firms headquartered in red states.
I like that. That's good.
That's pretty expensive. And then somebody else is saying what a lot of the other texters are saying too. I'm conserving my energy for when Trump is actually in office.
Can you do me a favor? This is for people.
The damage and outrage is going to be huge, like nothing you've ever seen. The largest, the biggest, like nothing you've ever seen. Trump says it all the time. Everything's like nothing you've ever seen.
It is nothing you've ever seen.
Maybe we should
By the way,
begin the show every day with a Trump dance.
Everybody else is doing it. Everybody else is doing it. You see that boxer doing it?
You want to try it, Jim?
No, I do not want to try it, but thank you. What was my point? Oh, my point is the phones are not working again. They'll be working by the next time we invite your calls. But what we'd like you to do, since the phones are not working, if you're calling, if you just can scream your position as loudly as possible, it's possible we'll hear it here at the library.
Yeah. Okay. I'm looking for some texts here.
You are?
Yes.
Here's one. Maybe the left should have their own insurrection, except ours would be like a pride parade. It's actually has some legitimacy there. Well, we could also end this segment since we can't talk to anybody. You want to talk to each other?
No, I just
When are you deciding if you're going to the march on January 18th? And Marjorie apparently has not decided because it's way in the future.
It's way in the future.
And she doesn't have to decide until on January 19th, she's going to come in and say, I'm going to the march. Well, actually, it was yesterday,
I would like
Marjorie.
to point out, Jim,
what?
That this isn't just, for women.
I know that.
I mean,
yeah.
Where are you going to be?
I'll be there.
Okay.
I'll be there. I'll go with you. If you go, I'll say it right here.
Okay.
You go, I'll go with you. How about that? What do you mean, okay? Let's resolve this right. What? No, we'll see. You want to go?
I don't know.
Okay, good.
I'm going to take the temperature.
You are?
I'm going to take the temperature.
No, things are going to get a lot better, by the way.
They're going to be a lot better. Okay.
He has decided, by the way, Trump has announced in the final round of nominees, there will be a limited number of rapists. He's decided to reduce the percentage. I mean, by the way, for you Trump people who are upset about what we're saying, do a little reading on Hegseth. And one of the reasons this woman is not speaking is because his lawyer forced her to sign an NDA, non-disclosure, as part of the settlement. And the lawyer, did you see the lawyer last night for the two women?
Yes.
And he was really honest because he went on to say, when the interviewer said, Did Gates know that the woman he was not having sex with, forcing himself on, was 17 years old? Because that's the definition.
Right.
He said, honestly, I'm not sure he did. I don't think he did. As soon as he found out she was underage, he stopped having sex with her until she became 18. But I didn't mean that as a joke. That's what the lawyer said. And by the way, there's no doubt, based upon this testimony these women gave to the House Ethics Committee, he was paying for sex regardless of what their age was.
Which I believe is a crime, is it not?
I think it is, too.
I mean, we have all these guys waiting to find out if their name's going to be revealed in this case of this sex trafficking that was happening over in your neighborhood in Cambridge, Jim. All the people that were supposedly very prominent people that were the men, that were the Johns in this case. So obviously they're in the court system.
They are.
So once again, it just is kind of an odd thing when you think about the Attorney General of the United States being a John in a sex case involving an underage woman. I mean, it's a new frontier for the United States of
By the
America.
way, two last texts. Well, not texts. Nicole, our colleague, says, I went to the Women's March in 2017. It was an incredible experience. I was in high school at the time. This is pretty great and only helped inspire me to pursue journalism, which is great. And Keith from Rhode Island, you want to read that one?
A president needs a crack White House team. Trump has a white crack house team.
I think Keith nailed it.
That was the other thing, that he's grinding up the erectile dysfunction drugs.
Right.
And then
mixing with energy drinks.
Drink chaser so he can keep going all night long.
Yeah, it's a beautiful
This is the guy that's going to be the chief law enforcement person of the land. I'm telling you, what are you going to do? If you can't cry, or you got to laugh, or you can't cry. What's the expression?
I don't know.
If I wasn't crying, I'd be laughing. Or
something like
I'm laughing,
that.
so I'm not crying.
Exactly.
Whatever it is.
Thank you.
After a quick break, NBC Sports Boston, Trenni Casey is next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We're going to talk with Trenni about the Trump dance, if you don't know about that, the Mike Tyson fight, and the New England Revolution's stadium plans. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
The Spanish superstar Rafael Nadal is hanging up his tennis racket. After an historic 23-year career, he's got plenty to celebrate.
There's certainly one record and one number that will remain potentially forever in sports. 14 French Opens, 14 is, in the words of many players, insane.
We look back on Nadal's remarkable run next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Comcast Business, committed to providing connectivity for your business with network and cybersecurity solutions. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply. To learn more, you can call or visit ComcastBusiness.com. And Safety Insurance, offering auto insurance policies designed to help for when the worst happens. You can ask an independent agent about safety insurance. Safety Insurance. We'll help you manage life's storms.
Is my mic on? Yep. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marge Regan, live at the library. Streaming youtube.com/GBH News. We're back tomorrow and Friday. Next Tuesday, Andrea Campbell, the AG, joins us for an hour. Before we do the text prompt and introduce Trenni, I just want to say an anonymous texter ending our prior discussion says, part of me thinks give them enough rope to hang themselves. And the only problem with that, because a lot of people think that way, is that probably means you're not among those to be hanged. And when you are, it's not as easy to say, let there be blood on the streets. It's just not. In any case, our text prompt of the day at 877-301-8970. How far will you go to get a snoreless night's sleep? Have you tried, this is real apparently, strapping tape across your mouth or your partner's, sort of like a hostage? Send us your best tips to beat snoring. Margie will read some of them a little before 1. We're joined now at the library by Trenni Casey, anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston, and a BPR contributor. Hi, Trenni.
Hi, I have mouth taped.
You have not.
I have mouth taped, yes, but not because I'm a snorer. I read this book called Breath.
Breath, same book I read.
Yes.
And
so I tried it. Well, it turns out I'm not a mouth breather. I'm a nose breather. So I could sleep with the tape across my mouth all night long until like 4 in the morning when finally like something would make me gasp for air. But it wasn't until like 4 in the morning. But my husband, on the other hand, snores. Like I've recorded him. I mean, if you'd like, I'll play it for you on this very program sometime.
Really like that, yeah.
So we got a sleep number bed.
Oh, so you can
when
have
he's
different...
we used to be the spokespeople for sleep number beds in our old job.
I have one.
One time he was snoring so bad because he had brown liquor. Brown liquor is the worst.
It is?
Oh my God, Jim.
Yeah.
It's bad when he has a cold or something. He's just sort of a
like
snorer.
Scotch or bourbon, you
Yes,
mean?
like a Scotch or a bourbon. So like I'll just give they have a snore setting. They have a partner snore setting. I hit it, it raises him. One night it was so bad he woke up like Weekend at Bernie's. Like he was like upright because it was so bad. I could nothing I did could make him stop snoring.
Wow. Well, that's very useful for our texting.
Give that a whirl.
That's where I heard about
number
it
bed.
too
Yes.
in that book Breath, which is
Yes,
a really good book.
it is.
Anyway, let's talk for a bit about the Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul fight, described as an absurd spectacle that we deserve. We have a little sound of this the moment they announced the winner of the boxing match between Paul and Tyson Friday.
Declaring your winner by unanimous decision, Jake
Well, it happened. Jake Paul beat Mike Tyson. And the crowd here wondering what to make of it all.
That was a really smart observation. Yeah.
So was that an accurate description of the absurd spectacle we all deserve?
So I didn't watch it because I'm not staying up till midnight to watch a guy who's 27 beat up a 58-year-old man. That was not enticing to me. But Will Leach, who wrote this great column in the New York Times, and I really like Will, he actually started Deadspin, which back in the day was sort of a tabloidy sports site. But he's a very smart guy. He's now since written books. He's a very astute observer of culture and sports and politics. And he's right. He wrote this column in the New York Times where he said, this is what we deserve. We love these spectacles. I mean, look at the clown show we're watching unfold right now going on in Washington, D.C. and Mar-a-Lago. Have you guys ever seen the movie Idiocracy?
No.
Okay,
so the movie,
see it? So the movie Idiocracy, the gist of it, this woman's shaking her head. The gist of it is that this guy gets Luke. I forget his name.
Oh, he's the brother of the other guy.
Luke Wilson.
Yep. Thank you, John
Wilson
Parker.
Gets frozen by the army, and he's supposed to wake up in a year, but he doesn't wake up until 2030 or something like that. And when he wakes up, a reality star is president. Everybody watches bogus, terrible, slap, and there is something called slap fighting. I think it was in this movie. It's basically the dumbing down of America, and that's what the Jake Paul Mike Tyson thing was. It wasn't a push for boxing. You didn't see a good boxing match. If you watch the undercards, they actually
the women were incredible.
So that was at 10:45. I was in bed by 10 o'clock on a Friday because I'm super cool. But we did go to a friend's house to have some pizza and watch a little bit. We watched some of the undercards. The undercards were actually pretty good fights, but the main event was it's just a way to get eyeballs on something. I mean, 60 million people tuned in for it.
60 million households.
Households.
So that's probably
it's more than
125.
60 million people. Yeah.
How many of you watched the Tyson, whatever his name is, Paul fight? Wow.
Not one. I like the quick hands.
How many of you are lying? That is pretty impressive, I have to say.
So what about
Well, it's free if you have Netflix. Unlike, for those who don't follow a professional boxing, and I did follow it during Muhammad Ali. It's the only time I followed him my whole life, and actually got to see him fight a few times live, which is about the most exciting stuff I've ever experienced in that sort of way. Those fights used to cost $50, $100 for pay-per-view. This is free if you already had Netflix, which is part of the draw.
And
obviously.
some of the things like UFC fights and whatnot, they still are pay-per-view. But this was Netflix testing out to see whether or not they could handle live sports. And I think we're going to hear about it right now. A little sound about how poorly they handle live sports.
Yeah, do we have a little sound about
Howard Stern? Here's Howard Stern's reaction to these technical failures on the broadcast. And the reason he talked about it is because on Christmas Day, I think, is it Christmas? Netflix has a couple of NFL games which are really huge. Here's Howard Stern.
Beyonce's going to be the halftime act.
That's Thanksgiving, actually.
Nope. She's halftime Christmas
Day. Oh, it is Christmas?
Day. Yep.
Wait, the Houston game?
So she must be in Houston, I'm assuming. So it's a 1 o'clock and a 4:30 game, both of which are on Netflix.
That's Christmas. Okay, here's Stern and whoever his co-host is. Here it is.
You gotta. I don't know how this stuff works, but you got to make sure it works. But people.
Well,
probably
they said
pissed.
they're going to fix it because they have 2 football games. They're going to be streaming around Christmas or something.
Steelers game, yeah. If you up people's football, there's hell to pay. There's hell to pay. They better not.
Oh, my
He's
God.
right. You can't have buffering. And you know what? We were talking about this. Obviously, this streaming platform is affecting my business, the sports business. A lot of things are going from cable to streaming platforms instead of being able to be seen on over the air. There's this shift to go. Amazon, of course, has a football game every Thursday night now. Amazon next year is going to have NBA basketball. They're going to be one of the providers. And quite frankly, their product has gotten better this year, but like the audio still isn't quite right. And there's just some kinks to it. You can't have buffering. Like, you need to figure this out. This is the future of how people are going to watch live programming, our streaming platforms. At some point, we're going to go to all streaming. I don't know when that is. But I would imagine in my lifetime, in our lifetime, we'll see all streaming instead of sort of over-the-air channels. And they need to figure it out.
You know, we were going to talk about another depressing topic. Is Trump trying to bring together the PGA and the Saudi golf thing? I don't want. It's too depressing.
But we left Tyson before we talked about
what do you want to say?
The toad venom.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Oh,
right.
yes.
Yeah.
So
he said God told him to fight this fight.
So apparently Mike Tyson, the whole reason he even did this, I thought maybe he did it for money. He did get paid a lot, by the way.
$20 million.
He was paid $20 million. Jake Paul was paid $40 million. I know. And Jake Paul allegedly bet it all on himself. So I don't know how much he made, but he made a lot of money. The odds actually weren't great. He was like, I don't know. Mike Tyson was like plus 158 or something, which means Jake Paul was just like a little bit under. Anyway, that doesn't matter if you're not a betting person, but he made a lot of money. So Mike Tyson apparently said that the reason he did this is because he started smoking toad venom.
Who doesn't do
where
that?
you grind it down to a fine powder.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then you smoke it, and it's like a hallucinogenic. And he told Rosie Perez, who until Friday, I was not aware, is the queen of boxing. That's what people call her. Remember the woman that Rosie Perez, the actress from White Men Can't Jump? Let me tell you, not the most astute boxing analyst. Like, I was really I was like, oh, this is so cool. Rosie Perez, I wonder if she has some really great insight. It was like, wow, that was a great jab. And I was like, I don't know anything about boxing, and I could have told you that. And so he told Rosie Perez in a pre-fight interview that when he was smoking the toad venom, God told him that he should fight.
Right.
And so now apparently he's a proponent for being able for like psychedelics and hallucinogenics like toad venom.
By the way, none of you watched the fight. Wait.
So
How many of you smoked toad venom in the audience? Very few, maybe half the audience.
I think Marjorie, it was 8 rounds, and they did use. And again, I'm not a boxing expert, but apparently standard matches, you use 10-ounce gloves, and in this one, these were 14-ounce gloves, which I guess
don't hurt as much.
They don't hurt as much because there's more padding in them. So there were like all these little, and like Jake Paul's like a reality star. He's not a real boxer. Like, it just was a farce all around.
Okay. And by the way, the rounds were only 2 minutes, so that's another thing too. So I want to skip the
usually
PGA
they're 3
thing
rounds.
because it's too depressing. This is not depressing. There's a wonderful story. We often talk with you about individual women's sports and how they're all growing. There's this wonderful story about, as a group, how they are exploding in terms of attendance and revenue. So give us the summary there, if you can, Trenni.
Yeah, basically, I think the story was built around the NW, so the National Women's Soccer League game, on Sunday between the Washington Spirit, and I'm forgetting who they played, but the Washington Spirit won.
Bay FC.
Bay FC, so the Bay Area Football Club. And the crux of the story was that this soccer match, which was the quarterfinals in the WSL, was happening at the same time as the Washington Commanders game, and both drew sellout crowds. And so the article went on to explain that this isn't an off thing. This isn't like a one-off, right? That women's sports has seen, we had record attendance and viewership for the women's NCAA tournament this year. It actually outdrew the men's NCAA tournament.
Wow.
We saw record viewing and attendance in the WNBA. We saw record attendance in the NWSL, which of course Boston will have a team in 2 years in 2026 with Boss Nation. And so it's a real groundswell. It's growing. People are paying attention. I just read an article the other day, and I should have sent this, sorry guys, as it just popped in my head now. I just read a story that locally there is a women's sports bar in Jamaica Plain. There is a place where you can go watch just women's sports sports, and those are popping up all over the place. It started out in Portland. It's called the Sports Bra. That was the first, but now they're spreading across the country. You have Whoopi Goldberg, who is invested in the All Women's Sports Network, AWSN. You have Amazon getting in on the WNBA. You have Peacock getting in, NBC, my parent company, to be fair, in the WNBA. Of course, ESPN has always been involved in it. CBS Sports and CBS Sports Network, like they're getting television deals. Listen, this is huge for women's sports.
Wow.
Because we've always said that they don't get enough attention, they're not talked about enough, but now there are platforms dedicated to them. And any more exposure, it can only be good for the product. And I think soccer is a really great place for them to. Soccer and basketball, I think, are two really great sports to grow women's sports, because especially soccer, because the U.S. women's national team, which many of the U.S. women's national team players play then on these pro clubs, they're the best of the best. The MLS, with all due respect, and I know we're going to talk about the Revs new stadium, I think it's going to be great for them. The MLS is still a second, third tier soccer league in terms of world domination, but the U.S. women's soccer is some of the best in the world, and which means our teams are some of the best in the world. So you're not seeing a lower level of soccer in the NWSL. You're seeing high-level, world-class soccer in that league, which you don't necessarily see in the same way in the MLS like you do, say, in the Champions League or the Premier League.
You know, we were going to talk about the Revs' potential new stadium in Everett, but let's do it now. It's in this economic development bill. No, it's fine. Whatever they got to do with the land is now allegedly taken care of in this economic development bill. But you know what just occurred to me when you mentioned women? That's for the Revs, theoretically, and maybe 20 concerts a year. Rather than this big fight over White Stadium, which Mayor Wu, why wasn't this a joint effort? The Revs play one day and the women's pro soccer team plays the next day.
Oh, that's a great question that I honestly don't have an answer for. I don't know. I don't know if it's because of number of games or it's seasonally. I don't know if, and this could be an issue. I don't know if it has something to do with when the stadium would be available. Like, did the NWSL want to play in White Stadium and then have to move if they're going to get the renovations? Maybe they see value in, maybe it's too big at this. I don't know. I'd actually love to know the answer to that.
Well, let's do a second question. The Globass. The Revs averaged 29,000 fans last year, which was really high. And the stadium that Kraft has been dying to build
is going to be smaller.
Has fewer seats in there. I don't
because
get
you
it.
still want a soccer-specific stadium. Like the viewing experience at Gillette Stadium. First of all, your target audience right now for professional soccer is primarily young and immigrant.
Yeah.
Right? And so where do your young people and a lot of your immigrants live? They live a lot closer to the city. Yeah. So to trek, it's impressive to me that all of these people trek down to Foxborough. But I do think you're going to have a better atmosphere. You're going to have, mostly in soccer, they play on natural grass. It's pretty frowned upon to play on synthetic grass, which is what Gillette Stadium is. So I would imagine that the new stadium in Everett, because synthetic grass is really bad for your legs. Like there's a lot of, if you can maintain good natural grass, that is by far the best playing surface for any sport. Football players hate playing on turf. They don't like playing on synthetic grass, but it's just hard. In a lot of these cold weather stadiums, or if you're in a dome, it's hard to, they complain about, so Lambeau Field in Green Bay has natural grass, but that's the one natural grass surface a lot of players complain about because it's hard to keep, when it's cold from November to January.
Like a rock.
It's like a rock.
Yeah.
So it's a give and take. I mean, they have heaters underneath and there's all this technology, yada, 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 but it's still not always perfect. But it does they think it leads to higher prevalencies of ACL tears and like lower body injuries, to the point where Lionel Messi, who of course plays for Miami FC, oftentimes if he goes to a stadium that has synthetic, he won't always play. So you have a better chance of seeing him play in person, because in Europe they play on natural grass.
By the way, that may be the answer.
In Europe, everything's natural. Here, we just put fake stuff everywhere.
That may be the answer to the question, by the way, about why the women's team would not play in the same stadium, is maybe it's so hard to make sure that natural grass is okay if there are too many competitions.
Yes, if there's too much running around on it. And they wear spikes. They wear cleats.
So, Trenni, before you go, tell us about this, the Katie Stone, who used to be the Harvard's women's hockey coach, and her discrimination case.
You didn't send me this, so I don't know if I can speak to it.
Well, I can speak
That's
to
okay.
it. We spoke to her a lot. She was investigated.
She was
by
investigated
Harvard
and
because
dismissed.
of lots of questions about abuse, and now she's upset because apparently Harvard is not. I hope I get this right too. Harvard is not opposing a motion
to dismiss
around her claim that she was discriminated against by Harvard itself.
Yeah, they're saying Harvard damaged her by refusing to defend her against quote-unquote malicious and false allegations of misconduct. And she responded to their motion, Harvard's motion to dismiss her lawsuit, saying she should be allowed to pursue her claims that the college created a hostile work environment and retaliated against her.
So what I would say is that, not having read this most current article, but knowing the backstory to this, there were plenty of...
And Rockland Trust Bank, committed to helping individuals and local businesses work towards their financial goals by providing financial advice and resources. More at rocklandtrust.org. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC. It's the story of one of the most curious men in history. This two-part series from Ken Burns delves inside the mind of the 15th century polymath. Catch the final part of Leonardo da Vinci tonight at 8 on GBH2.
Trusted. Local. News. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters?
Former GOP Congressman Sean Duffy to head the Department of Transportation.
Duffy represented a district in his native Wisconsin in the House of Representatives for 8 years. He's worked as a contributor at Fox News since 2020 and hosted The Bottom Line on the Fox Business Network since 2023. Duffy's roots in the television business run deep. He appeared on MTV's The Real World in 1997. Before Wisconsin,
Healy and Attorney General Andrea Campbell about their thoughts on Mariano's plan. Since opening in 2021, Polar Park in Worcester, the AAA affiliate for the Boston Red Sox, has yet to generate revenue for the city on the scale anticipated in its taxpayer-backed financing plan. The Telegram and Gazette reports that the city has 30 years to repay the more than $140 million it borrowed to finance the park's construction. One city official in Worcester says that the city has missed expected revenue of $345,000 in real estate and property taxes, $62,000 in meals taxes, and $385,000 for building permits. Sunny upper 50s today, 52 right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Charles Schwab, offering investors choices like full-service wealth management, advice, investing, and trading on Thinkorswim. Learn more at schwab.com. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
It's Jim Brady. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back here tomorrow, Wednesday, and Friday next Tuesday. We're going to be joined from 1 to 2 by the Attorney General of the Commonwealth, Andrea Campbell. Hello again, Jim.
Hi, you're reading the text prompt,
I'm reading the text. Okay, here we go. Reminder about our text prompt today. That's at 877-301-8970. So, how far will you go to get a snoreless night's sleep?
Oh, my God.
Have you tried strapping tape across your mouth or strapping it across your partner's mouth like they're a hostage? Send us your best tips to beat snoring, and we'll read them a little bit before the 1 o'clock news.
Trenni said she does that, and
the
it's
tape.
working for her.
In the same place I read that book, Breathe.
Whatever.
That's where I read
So
it.
we're joined at the Boston Public Library desk by Juliette Kayyem. Juliette's former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under President Obama, the faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. Hello, Juliette.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming out.
Yes, thank you very much, Juliette Kayyem, for coming in. But let's start with the President-elect's plan to use the military to move migrants out of the country. What's the latest?
Well, I mean, the latest of what we know that he's done is that he's like sort of concurred with this nebulous thing about declaring a national emergency. That then he would use the military for mass deportations. Okay, so now here's your reality-based analysis. Okay, First of all, a president does not need to declare a national emergency to be able to use the military for non-law enforcement purposes. So if he wants to use the military to set up shelters or holding facilities or whatever, he can do this. So a lot of this is just the way that Trump likes to get attention is, I'm going to declare a national emergency. The second is there does have to be a factual basis for the declaration of national emergency, because you would imagine that people are going to sue him. I don't know what that national emergency is. The numbers are relatively low at the border. And the third is these people are like, I don't even know. It's like they're like, I'm going to use this word that I hate when they use about women, but since it's all men, I can say they're just freaking hysterical. It's unbelievable. Everything gets solved by the military. Everything is a crisis. You know, people comment about this stuff. They don't even know the basic facts. In 2023, over 1 million people were deported from this country. So tell me what numbers you're talking about. Are you talking about 6 million this year? Well, how, in fact, are you going to do it? Because we don't have the capacity to do it. And if you say that you're going to militarize or you're going to use the military, how does that actually work? So part of me feels like he's baiting a reaction. I have no doubt that in the first to second week, he's going to have a shock and awe thing. Like he needs to do that. He thrives off it. He gets his thrills off of it. And so it will be something like this. But then we got to sort of pierce, like, what in fact is being done? And we just have to wait and see, because he's hysterical. I mean, let's just be honest. He's hysterical. Like, I'm going to use that word for our president.
Okay.
So, and the assumption is he's going to start this in states where local law enforcement will help. We spoke to Mayor Wu the other day. She mentioned there'd not be cooperation. The governor has said the same sort of thing. And if he's smart, this would be Trump and the people carrying this thing out, Homan, who's the Homeland Security guy, and whoever else. I'm assuming they'll do exactly what they say they're going to do, is go after people who've committed crimes other than the, quote, crime of crossing the border, which probably is going to get a lot of support, because every Democrat goes out of their way to say, of course we support the deportation of people who have committed crimes. So
they're going to do my educated guess, as that's all we're doing right now, is they will do some very high-profile deportations of people that probably ought to have been deported already. Those would be felon criminals who are being held in jails, held in facilities. They'll do those. The next, and that will get you a certain number. So part of this is just he wants his numbers. My guess is he's going to take Biden's number, which is about, I don't know, if you do 1 million a year divided by 12, I don't know what the math is, but over 100,000.
80,000
Thank you, 80,000 a month.
Yeah.
He'll take those numbers and say, I deported 80,000 people this month, as if as if that wasn't happening already. I think in my, going into sort of, the deep, dark, how bad is this going to get? I do worry about something called TPS. It's called temporary protective status.
Yes, so people from Haiti.
Yeah, so it's mostly Haiti, but it's actually
Venezuela.
Venezuela. Yeah. It's I think a dozen or whatever. It's actually Palestinians from Gaza. Temporary protective status is a statute that authorizes the president to grant legal status to people on a temporary basis, because to send them back would be sort of cruel and unusual. It's not asylum. It's actually groups of people. It's if you're from this country or that country or that country. The TPS people are the people who live in Springfield, Ohio.
Yes.
So these guys carry a grudge. And so these guys being Trump and Vance. I do wonder whether TPS, the Dominican Haitians and others, whether he'll end that, thereby creating from a lawful category automatically, not within a day, but unlawful category, and begin to deport
By the
those
way, I don't
people.
think you need to, what you said, Vance. I don't think you need to worry about Vance. I think he's deported Vance already. I mean,
unbelievable.
Where the hell is this guy?
How do I feel sorry for Vance? Like, this is how screwed up the world is. I'm like looking at all these other people. Like, he wasn't even at the fight on Saturday.
I know,
he wasn't on the plane.
Not allowed to come. With the
That's
McDonald's
how bad
plane.
it's gotten.
Can I just say one thing? I don't want people to be left with the wrong impression, which I think I unintentionally left about, well, they're going to first go after hardened criminals. channels, etc. When you turn on your television and you see them going after, and I assume the toughest of tough guy way, after people, even if they are people who've committed crimes in this country and should be deported, that's a pretty scary kind of image for people, particularly people whose skin color is the same, even if they're here legally. I mean, this is a really scary proposition.
If we're going to see it, you know,
what do you think? The news is not going to cover it?
Well, I think they could make it very difficult for journalists, keep them far away. I mean, they've arrested a lot of reporters.
I think you know, I think you're right about they'll do a red state first, so it's probably going to be Texas. I mean, here's the thing about what Trump says. There are some military deployments to the border already. I mean, when I was state Homeland Security advisor, we actually authorized a deployment of the National Guard to the border. It's not, you know, they have a way of making it seem like they invented the wheel. Like it's not like there haven't been attempts to secure the border. But
Obama deported a huge number of people.
I mean, people are shocked when I say over 1 million under Biden. Yeah,
okay.
But I mean, you know, he doesn't get credit for it.
Can we go to Brazil for this G20 thing?
Oh, yeah.
And the thing that, I mean, I don't know what you want to say about it. What I want to say about it is it seems to me that Biden on his last foreign trip like this is going out of his way, as I'm glad he is, to try to get support for Ukraine in light of the fact that apparently neither Trump nor Vance are terribly supportive of Ukraine's fight to defend its democracy. It seems to me from long distance, it sort of fell on, I don't know, deaf ears, but bored ears. How well did anything go? Or are they all just waiting with great anticipation or fear for Trump?
Yeah, this was an interesting trip for Biden because he still wants to have an agenda, especially as it relates to the environment and the rainforest. A little bit of it was, to the extent he can, do Trump proofing with our allies in terms of, take the long view that this is just a blip. I don't know if it's just a blip, but the world is orienting already around Trump. So I mean, we're barely. Trump has. I honestly believe Trump has gotten more press as president-elect in the last 2 weeks than Biden got in 4 years. It's like we can't keep our eyes off of him. And so on Ukraine, in the end, the support for Ukraine was really a NATO support. The rest of the world really was not that engaged in it. It wasn't like the war in Afghanistan where you had sort of a multi-ethnic coalition of the willing. This ended up really being a NATO and fight, and it's one that talk about Trump proofing. It's one that Biden is ratcheting up, as we've all read, with these medium to long range, depending on who you talk to, medium to long range missiles that are now being sent over to Ukraine for the stated purpose of attacking in Russia. So he's upping it a little bit. I think part of that in this Trump proofing on Ukraine is everyone knows that Trump will want a resolution. Zelensky has basically said there will be a resolution. The better positioning that Ukraine has when there is some resolution means that they probably have to give up less. And so I think that's what this is about. There's another piece to this, which is, the North Koreans have sent 10,000 plus troops to Russia. They're the guys that are in the line of fire right now in these fights in Russia. And I do think that the United States wants to make it clear to North Korea, your people are going to die as well. They don't care, but it's just I think it's a way to try to stop that flow of North Koreans to Russia.
What about Europe's support? You mentioned this is a NATO thing from the beginning. I mean, the other NATO nations, are they going to step up?
Step up is... I think they will not waver because they're under threat, and all sorts of other countries are going to be worried. I honestly believe that if Biden had run again, so I'm taking us back a couple months, that the beginning of Biden's second term would have been forcing the Ukrainian, to the extent we could, but to sit down and have some sort of settled agreement. That's now been taken away. Trump will get the credit for that in many ways, and I think NATO would be prepared to support that at this stage. But Zelensky, these are These are people with agency. It's going to have to be beneficial to Zelensky in the end, and so this will linger for a couple months.
Well, yeah, the concern I have, knowing not much about foreign policy except what I read, is it seems to me that when NATO's role becomes even more important when we start backing away under Trump, I mean the rest of the NATO nations, is there's no Angela Merkel. There's no huge figure who, when I'm thinking about what's going on in Europe, particularly Western Europe, I say, well, I want to hear what he or she has to say.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess Macron is trying in France, but there's no Merkel-like huge figure who can command the attention of her.
And Germany's government is faltering. That's exactly right, is that there's no counter to Trump. So the first is not Trump. Trump is sort of all over the place, and Elon Musk, God knows what he wants. Vance has been pretty clear that he wants this to end, and if it ends beneficially to Russia, that's fine. You do have an offset in the Republican leadership now in the Senate. Now, we don't know how strong they're going to be against Trump, but you still have a bunch of senators who are of that old school foreign policy establishment who do believe in NATO.
Right, they've shown a lot of courage too, so I'm really hopeful about them.
Oh my God.
We're top meeting. This client is an unmitigated disaster. Right?
Disaster.
Is that because Trump is waiting in the wings?
Yeah.
That is what it is.
I mean, all the ones that don't want any of this stuff to work are just waiting for him, and he's picking these like coal miners to be like Secretary of the Interior. I don't even know anymore. And at the same time, there's some new data that shows that we may have peaked on our greenhouse emissions. That some of this stuff may be working. I mean, we obviously have to reduce it. Some of these rules and multinationals. Look, the United States will not lead this effort anymore. I mean, of the things that I'm quite certain of in the Trump administration, this is one of them.
So the good news is we're going to die a little later than we were going to die.
Just slightly later.
So can we talk
about these appointments?
So the Interior Secretary nominee is the governor of North Dakota, which is the third largest oil drilling state. That's Doug Burgum. Here's Chris Wright, who's going to be the Energy Secretary. He is the former, well, I guess he still is, Liberty Energy CEO. He's speaking in a video posted on his LinkedIn page just last year. Here is Wright.
We have seen no increase in the free...
denying that or not nurturing that. You also have the private sector that looks at these numbers. Texas is a perfect example. People do not recognize Texas is the most aggressive green energy state. Yep,
because of Rick Perry.
Yeah, because
back when wind farms and solar panels,
green or whatever. If you want to make money, so I'm going to think like Trump. If you want to make money, you are not going into coal, and you are not necessarily going into drilling anymore. So if you look at the drilling companies, their leases, they're having fewer leases now. You are going to go into green energy. So part of this is you're going to have two buffoons running these agencies. You're going to have the world moving on, and I'm not looking for silver lining everywhere, and just this is the way it will work. At some stage, Trump will embrace it because he will realize that's where his money people are happy. I will say this issue of drilling is red meat to the left and the progressives. There's a lot of conversations now about, how should we focus or whatever, and control by the GOP. I think they're going to throw out drilling. We're going to get all upset. There are so many more important issues related to climate change and mitigation and resiliency than whether a permit is granted to a Republican gas drilling company that they will build the infrastructure within 8 years. And so part of what I hope as I think about the focus is drilling is a way to get us to not look into the light. It's a distraction, and so no one's going to listen to me. I'm going to get a lot of emails from people saying that drilling in Anwar is the worst thing possible, but I don't know. Every 4 years we go back and forth on it, and we're still living.
You know what I forgot that we agreed we were going to bring up?
What?
Is when we were talking about these cabinet nominees. The New York Times is reporting about 10 minutes ago, or a little bit longer, An unidentified hacker has gained access to a computer file shared in a secure link among lawyers whose clients have been giving damaging testimony about Matt Gaetz, the former congressman, president-elect choice to be attorney general. The file of 24 exhibits is said to include sworn testimony by a woman who said she had sex with Gaetz in 2017 when she was...
And the faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. Up next, CNN's John King is zooming in. We're going to talk to him about where is J.D. Vance? He seems to have disappeared. We talked about that briefly. And the parade of accused sex predators ready to join the cabinet of Donald Trump, of course, who is an adjudicated sex predator. We'll hear what John has to say about that. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Trusted. Local. News.
I'm reporter Megan Smith. Come with me to an adaptive fashion show at Boston Fashion Week.
Adaptive fashion means people with any ability could be able to dress themselves as independent as possible and with as much dignity as possible.
I can look cute and adorable and feel good.
It gives you that confidence.
Dedicated to what matters to you. GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and Mass General Brigham Health Plan with Medicare Advantage plans that combine comprehensive coverage, including prescription, dental, and vision connected to expert care. Plan details are at mgbadvantage.org. And the Fair Housing Alliance of Massachusetts, working to end voucher-based and other forms of housing discrimination by providing legal services, education, and community resources to the Commonwealth. MAFHAM.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marge Regan, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're back here tomorrow and Friday. Next Tuesday, we're also back here.
That we talk about a lot didn't care or didn't know about it because they're in the misinformation bubble or because they're listening to, as we read more and more, podcasters like Joe Rogan as a source of their news. Do we have any idea yet what
Yeah, we do. I think it's a mix. I think there are people who like the fight in Trump, I'm not saying they like that he's a convicted felon, but they believe him or they take his word for it that all of that is at least grossly exaggerated, if not false, and part of the deep state. It's a different issue when it comes to some of the treatment of women issues, whether it's physical assaults on women or just the words and toxic tone he uses sometimes, the lack of respect. That's different. So the Trump's base and Trump voters are more complicated than Washington and New York, I think, often think of them. But many of them did vote for him because they want something different and they just couldn't get to vote for the vice president. They thought she was either too much part of the Biden administration or too liberal, or they pushed her aside. But I think the challenge now is, look, in what I found in Iowa last week, and I think my piece it went up at noon on CNN.com. You can see the video version or the text version, is that a lot of Trump voters are aware of the bad sides. They are aware of the character stuff. They are aware of the clown car stuff. They're aware of a lot of things they don't like. They want him to fix the border, and they want him to juice the economy, and they're hoping they can block all that other stuff out. The question will be, they roll their eyes at the Matt Gaetz pick, and they roll their eye at the Kristi Noem pick, and some of them love the Bobby Kennedy pick. Some of them love it. Others roll their eyes at that. And the question becomes, in the transition, it's going to be hard for Republicans to vote against those people. I think the interesting thing will be circle back in 3 or 6 months when those people are actually in government jobs as opposed to just people Trump wants.
Why do they love the Bobby Kennedy pick?
The Trump base loves Bobby Kennedy. Okay. And I think that this is, again, one of the misunderstandings you're going to get from Washington and from sort of the people who are used to the government working in a normal way. He was, especially among the young men who voted for Trump, Kennedy had a lot of support. When Kennedy got out of the race and backed Trump, it really helped Trump with those young men. And then he was on the road supporting Trump. And he's anti-establishment. He kicks the can. Again, in theory, Marjorie, they love it. A year from now, if we're having trouble with public health and it's because of decisions that Bobby Kennedy made and Trump supported, I think that's a different question. So I think now we're in a political moment. Trump won. His supporters are emboldened by the fact that not only did he win all the battleground states, but he won the popular vote. That is a huge deal to them. People who used to be a little shy or a little reluctant, even looking down, almost embarrassed to say they voted for Trump, are now jumping up and down and saying they voted for Trump. They're proud of it. And they want change in Washington. But again, we're in a different moment now. He's the president-elect. So there's a lot of hope. They have a lot of hope that he's going to make things better. I think the challenge is going to be a lot of these people, as you were just talking to with Juliette Kayyem, one of the people I respect more than anyone in the world when it comes to the seriousness of taking your government job. I think there are legitimate questions about the experience and the seriousness of a number of these picks. And that, to use the cliche, the proof will be in the pudding. How do they actually govern as opposed to Trump won, he won big, and his voters believe he deserves his people.
We're talking to John King. In a minute, we're going to get to some of those nominees. Before we do, we suggested, admittedly, based on no sourcing, that the reason we don't see J.D. Vance is because Trump has deported him. Do you have any idea? Elon Musk, 24/7.
Trump Jr.
Robert Kennedy, 24/7. Trump Jr., even Mike Johnson, the speaker. Where the hell is J.D. Vance, John King?
Let me answer it this way. How often did you see Mike Pence until January 6th?
That's actually...
Yeah. So
Trump does not do number two. Trump does not do number two. This is not going to be a partnership. Trump does not do number two. Now, the question is, again, that may be an overly dramatic statement, but Trump believes he won the presidency. He does not believe J.D. Vance had much of a role in that. I'm not saying he dislikes him, but Trump has never been, hey, you do this, I'll do that. Trump wants it to be me, me, me. One of the reasons a lot of these picks, I come back to the picks we're going to get to in detail in a minute. A lot of people are saying, wait a minute, Sean Duffy's not a transportation secretary. Matt Gaetz is not an attorney general. Trump is planning, he has learned a lesson from the first term. He's going to try to run all of this out of the White House. Everything will be run out of the White House by him and by his czars that will work down the hall so that they're never out of his sight. And a lot of these people he's appointing, I'm not saying Trump doesn't like them, but he knows it's making Washington mad. He knows it's putting his fellow Republicans in difficult positions. He's doing it, forgive me, to flip the bird at the establishment and at the media and even at his own party.
John, speaking of the nominees, we've spoken a little bit about Matt Gaetz this morning, including this hacker releasing some information, according to the New York Times, about what we actually heard on CNN last night when the lawyer for two of the women was on one of your shows. I am an outlier on this issue. I know that the reporting is that he's calling senators, Donald Trump. He's all in. He's committed to him winning. I don't subscribe to that notion. I think it is a very simple, you're entitled to reject one of my nominees and one only. While you may think that a lot of them are unqualified, you can go nuts on this one guy. I'll pick some other horrible person who doesn't care about the Constitution either after you dump Gaetz. And once you've dumped him, you've had your pound of flesh. Now you play my game. Is that not a reasonable interpretation of what's going on?
I think it's a very reasonable interpretation. I would tweak it just a little bit in the idea that if Trump could find a way to get Matt Gaetz through, again, just because of the anxiety and that would cause the legal establishment, the political establishment, the Republican establishment, the Democratic establishment, the media establishment, that would be like a free day at the amusement park for Trump to cause everybody grief. However, I think you're exactly right that there's the idea that he may not, he may lose one of these. And so, but he doesn't want to lose more than one of these.
So the one that often causes me the most consternation is Tulsi Gabbard with the allegations that, she's too close to the Russians, a Russian asset, that she's too close to the Syrian president. I mean, that we were just talking about this with Juliette. Did he fly her over there to visit? That's a big concern, too, I think.
I think look, this is going to come down to, number one, remember the Lisa Murkowskis, the Susan Collins. There are still some Republicans who take their job seriously. There are a lot of, forgive me, there are a lot of Republicans in the Senate who take their job seriously. The question is, will they still, when they get around to these confirmation hearings, are they going to be worried about the internet and their phone calls and everything blowing up with Trump supporters saying, how dare you ask those questions? So the huge burden here, let's watch for the Republican mavericks who ask those tough questions about who paid for that. Really explain your views on that. What would you do about Ukraine? When was the last time you talked to anybody who worked for Vladimir Putin? But this is going to be the biggest burden here. We all know is going to be on the Democrats.
John, the one thing that is actually in some ways more troubling to me than at least what we hear up front on most of the nominees out of Republican senators, other than maybe Gaetz, is that there is at least some consideration being given to Trump's demand that there not be a process, but that these be recess appointments, meaning he's allowed to appoint them while their Congress is in recess. It seems to me that if they do that, Congress, the Republicans in Congress, are giving up one of their most sacred responsibilities out of fear of sycophancy directed towards Donald Trump. How likely is it that they accede to that in your estimation?
They're trying not to, Jim. I can't answer that question. I think that this is part, it's the same point you make about Trump's making calls for Gates, but does he really mean it, right? Is it more of it's a strategic transactional thing? Is his demand for these recess appointments, again, a threat, right? Give me most of what I want, almost all of what I want, or else I'm going to go to my people in the country who just voted for me in all the swing states, in all of your states, Republican senators, with just a few exceptions, and raise a stink about it. So I do think that, Trump is laying down some markers here, and he's testing them. He's testing them. John Thune would not have been Trump's first choice to be the new Senate Republican leader. That's probably why John Thune won, because the establishment Senate Republicans are like, we don't want to appear to be fully Trump sycophants. There's no question they're going to have to do a lot of Trump's bidding on things they would prefer not to do if you put them on truth serum. But I think we're in this enormous, until we actually get to the hearings, this is a testing phase. This is everybody staking out positions. Everyone's testing who's willing to give. And it's going to become a test. Whatever you think of Mitch McConnell, he had years as the leader. And you knew that he was not afraid to take hits from anybody, catch harpoons from anybody. Thune has been a protege of McConnell for a long time, but he's never been in this job. And Trump knows that. So this is a test for everybody, including Trump, by the way. What lessons did he learn? How seriously does he take his majority vote, knowing that some of those people do want him to sort of run the whole establishment up the flagpole, but some of them want him to do the border and immigration and stop the threatening talk, stop the bullying talk, never mind the enemy within and that retribution kind of stuff. Why don't we try governing on a few big issues? So he has a delicate issue too. We have zero evidence before us that Donald Trump gives a damn about nuance, but I think it's still a question we should watch.
What my favorite quote of the week and maybe the month and maybe the year will be from Sheldon Whitehouse, the senator from Rhode Island, who talked about the senators having to debate whether they're going to go into recess or whether they're going to approve these crackpots to run the cabinet. He said this will demonstrate the senators' willingness to quote unquote crawl for Donald Trump, and I thought that was a great image to keep in mind.
Well, can we add one? First of all, when is White House on again?
Next week.
The 4th of December. He will be joining us, Senator White House.
Yeah.
But, John, even when you mention the Republican senators, showing we don't want to be totally in the tank to Donald Trump with that vote for Thune, arguably the least Trumpian of the three candidates to be the Senate leader, they only did that because it was in secret. Had it not been a closed vote where each of them, when they're confronted by Donald Trump, can say, I voted for whoever you want me to, that's the only time they had the courage to stand up to him so far, isn't it?
It's a fair point that vote is a secret ballot, so he cannot figure out how it went. I think this is a fascinating question going forward. And again, we know the 2, the 3, maybe a handful who don't want to go along most of the time. Or I should say, look, whatever you think of Donald Trump, he just won a convincing victory. Our history tells us a president who wins a convincing victory gets a mandate. Now, let's define the mandate, right? A lot of people would say it's about immigration and it's about the economy. Trump thinks it's about everything. And this is going to be testing time for those Republicans who say, you didn't get a mandate to completely destroy the governing establishment in Washington. I think, look, there are a lot of people, a lot of Democrats too, who would like our government to be scrubbed from top to bottom. We live in the digital age, the smartphone age, the artificial intelligence age, and a lot of these agencies are living in technology and culture of 10, 15, 20 years ago. So don't close your mind to the idea that the American people, even people who didn't vote for Trump, would like their government looked at with a healthy skepticism, not a negative skepticism, but a healthy skepticism of what can we do better. The question is, are the people Donald Trump is naming to these jobs, and is Elon Musk and Ramaswamy being in charge of this, reinventing government thing? The last guy who tried this was Al Gore. I would not put Al Gore and Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy in the same box. Gore was a very serious guy who tried to do this back in the Clinton days. It needs to be done. The government needs to be looked at top to bottom. However, are these the guys who want to do it? I think is going to be the question of the next 3, 6, 9 months.
We're talking to John King, who's in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
So a lot of the analysis of the election post the election was very bad for those of us in the so-called mainstream media, talking about how young people, particularly young men, are getting all their news or most of their news from social media influencers and podcasts. So, what are we in the media supposed to do about that?
Adapt.
Yeah.
We can run from change, or we can embrace change. I think that, look, I do. So what do I do now? I tried a little podcasting. Maybe I'll continue that in the future. I do television. I write for CNN.com. I love being on the radio with you guys. I think we have to try a little bit of everything. I think our jobs have to become hybrid. And I think however you want to do that, whether you want to stay in the quote unquote traditional structure of radio or television or a newspaper, or whether you want to, even within that, our jobs are changing. Think about your job on the radio, 10 years ago compared to now. But when we started doing this, we were talking at people. They had to come when we wanted them to.
Right.
They had to, they had to come when the show is on at this time. We were talking at people. We have to talk with people. In the social media digital age, we have to have a conversation with our consumers, whether they're viewers or listeners, or whether they have headphones on, whether they're on a telephone or on their iPhone or their smartphone or their tablet or a television set. We have to constantly think and change, because they change. We have to meet them where they are, or else we're doomed. So as a dinosaur, I think, I always tell this to my bosses, treat me like the stunt dummy, the crash dummy in a new car, right? Put me in the chair. As long as it's editorially sound, I'll try new ways to do things. I think we have to do that and not be afraid to fail. As long as we are editorially sound, let's try to meet our audience where they are and have that conversation with them.
By the way, there's nobody I know in mainstream legacy media who is a better listener than you, John King, and I think that came across in all of your all over the map reports without exception.
I appreciate that.
John, what are the Democrats doing right now, and who's the leader? I know there was some upset because Nancy Pelosi was out there explaining what happened and what didn't happen according to her, but she's not the leader of even the Democrats in the House anymore. Hakeem Jeffries is. Who's having a meeting? Who's talking, saying this is how we have to reshape ourselves and our message?
All of the above. All of the above. I think we're in one of these moments where we don't know who. Well, number one, the Democratic Party does not have a leader right now. Technically, that would be President Biden. I think he would be the elder statesman who is wrapping up his last couple months in office. And I don't mean this with disrespect, but there are not a lot of Democratic voters who are going to say, hey, Joe, what should we do next? And so who is that leader? I'm sitting in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. There's a new young Democratic governor here who was on the short list for Kamala Harris. He's an interesting voice. So is the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer. Gavin Newsom runs the biggest state, would be the third or fourth largest country in the world if California broke off. So there are a lot of interesting Democratic voices around the country. I think Democrats, trust me, watch the piece I just did in Iowa and the pieces we did throughout the year in small town America. Democrats have to find voices in small town America. Now, that can be Western Massachusetts, too. That does not have to be Iowa or Nebraska or Kansas. Democrats have to go to the IBEW Hall in Dorchester on Marcy Boulevard and Florian Hall, in Dorchester, and talk to the firefighters because they have lost their connection to people who might be members of unions who tell them to vote Democratic, but who are focused on other issues or don't think, this may not be fair to some of the Democrats who hold office, but don't think that they understand their jobs or understand their lives. I was on a cattle ranch the other day, and the woman who runs that ranch, Michael Dukakis, carried the county she lives in. In my first campaign, it is ruby red now. Trump got 75% of the vote because farmers don't think Democrats care about them. They think people from California and New York and Washington are imposing one-size-fits-all solutions on them and not coming to spend a couple hours with them and say, we need to deal with the climate. How can we do it in a way where we don't hurt your business? They say they're never asked. They're always told what to do. So I'm rambling because this is a very complicated conversation for the Democrats, and it belongs in farms, it belongs in factories, it belongs in firehouses, it belongs in kitchens, it belongs in churches. It belongs everywhere. They have a problem, and they have a lot of rebuilding to do. It reminds me a lot of, sort of the after Mondale and after Dukakis, you had, the big debate. Was it Jesse Jackson versus Bill Clinton back in the day, remember, about how should we do this? And the next couple election cycles will sort this out. There's no one leader. You're going to have to pick some temporary leaders at the Democratic National Committee and things like that. But the next 2 or 3 election cycles are going to sort this out. And I think, in some ways, it's a great way to study. It's a great way to learn. It'll also be pretty messy. I can guarantee that.
Do you remember when Governor Dukakis served salmon to Reverend Jackson and he wasn't happy, John King? You remember that?
Happy July 4th on the Esplanade.
Yeah.
I remember it very, very well.
Hey, John.
Not to mention the arugula controversy.
In Iowa, right. Hey, John, we have avoided your obsession with your hometown teams during election season. You have 30 seconds. How happy are you about the new quarterback for your hometown Patriots?
I think he shows promise. They got a lot of work to do, but he's got spunk, he's got moxie, and it looks like he's got a lot of talent. So I hope they spend the rest of this season figuring out who else on the roster should be there next year and then making some investments. But he does look like he gives a damn, and that's all I really care about. Does he come to work? Does he learn the lesson? When he gets knocked down, does he get back up? And does he try to be better next week than he was last week? And so far, I'm really impressed. They got a long way to go, though.
The only thing I care about is that he doesn't do the Trump dance after he scores a touchdown next week. John King, it is great to talk to you. Good luck
Thank
in
you,
Bethlehem.
John.
We'll be watching your reporting. Thank you.
I won't be in a car next week, I promise.
Okay, that's great.
We have been speaking with John King. He is the chief national correspondent for CNN. Of course, he is a Dorchester boy. Up next, our tech segment of the day. Jim says mouth tape is ridiculous. I actually swear by it. Do you tape your or your partner's mouth shut just to get some shut-eye? We'll read your text next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, superstar soprano Renee Fleming. She joins us ahead of her performances with the Boston Symphony
Theater, Harvard University. Tickets at revels.org. And Babson College, where you can earn a part-time MBA for your full-time life at the school ranked #2 best college in the U.S. by the Wall Street Journal. Graduate courses offered online or in person with remote options. babson.edu/part-time.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're back here tomorrow and Friday. Next Tuesday, Andrea Campbell, the Attorney General, spends an hour with us from 1 to 2. So it's finally time for our tech segment. For all you mouth breathers among us, biologically, our bodies, at least this is what I read this morning, are built to breathe through our noses. When you breathe through your mouth for extended periods of time, Marjorie, like when you're sleeping, you're opening yourself to a whole host of issues: bad oral hygiene, sleep disorders, and of course, unhappy significant others. So Marjorie, before you read the text, you said a minute ago, you're joking when you tape your mouth?
No, just like Trenni Casey. I read this about 5 years ago or 6 years ago in the book Breathe, and I decided, well, what the hell? Because I always had a lot of cavities, and I figured, why was I getting...
You tape your mouth?
And I did. I got a little piece of tape, just a little piece of tape, like this big, and you put it between your upper and your lower lip, and it keeps your mouth closed, and you stop snoring. And not only do you stop snoring, but your mouth is not dry in the morning.
Yeah.
And then after you do it for a while, it works. You don't need to wear the tape anymore. So it's very exciting.
So you stop snoring. Do you stop breathing too? Or
No,
what?
you breathe through your nose.
You do?
Yeah, you breathe through your nose.
Can you breathe as much air through your nose as you do through your mouth? I can't.
You're supposed to breathe through your nose. It's much better for you to breathe through your nose. And it's much better for your teeth to breathe through
It
your
is?
nose. Yes.
Why is it better for the
Because your
teeth?
mouth dries up during the night,
Oh,
and there's something about
okay.
that has to do with cavities. I haven't had a cavity like now in 6 years since I
That's
started
fabulous.
doing it.
What are the texters saying?
Okay. Roy from Rhode Island says, my best cure for snoring is listening to a recording of Jim Browdy talking about daylight saving time each night. Better than counting sheep. And here's another one.
That's fairly
Sam
funny.
from Fairhaven.
Another one of the same?
Similar. I am curious about taping one's mouth. Perhaps Jim could demonstrate for 1 minute, or perhaps for one segment, or perhaps an entire show.
That's really
I
funny.
imagine Marjorie would be all for it.
See me laughing at these texts?
You were laughing
sort
a
of,
little bit. Now, a lot of people are talking about separate bedrooms. That Julie says after 20 years of pinching, punching, yelling, earplugs, nose strips, mouthpieces, Benadryl, she filed for a sleep divorce when her daughter moved out and started college. Julie moved out of her shared bedroom and into her daughter's old room, and her sleep is divine. Now, here's what I haven't heard of Jim. This is from a texter again. Rub Vicks Vapo Rub on your feet at night.
Yeah, I've done that.
It really works.
Yeah.
Your husband will thank you.
Yeah, you breathe through your toes. That's the whole idea with that. That I've done. That works really well.
Yeah, listen, this is another weird one.
Okay, fine.
A
Keep
former
reading.
coworker of mine, his wife, in order to prevent snoring or stop snoring, used to have a salt shaker next to the bed that she would then shake salt on his lips when he snored.
sure.
He would lick the lips and stop snoring. It worked until he died from a heart attack because he had too much salt. Yeah.
By the way, I don't want to pry into your personal life, but let me pry a drop.
Yep.
How appealing do other people find you having a tape mouth when you're lying in bed? Is that like a real turn on for people or what?
You had to be
it's
subtle.
like they're in the hostage sex or what?
You have to be subtle about it. You have to wait till the lights go off, and then if somebody talks to you, then you can just slide the tape down and answer the question, slide it back up. Slide it back up.
When we were teasing this at the beginning of the show, they talked about this apparently is real too. Mm-hmm. They call it hostage taping for real, where you tape your partner's mouth. I mean, really?
Well, I don't know if you want to tape your partner's mouth. That seems a little weird.
What do you tie them up to? Is that what you do? I mean,
I don't know. The dentist will tell you not to do it because I told my dentist about. Yeah, they were because some people think it helps for sleep apnea too. If you have sleep apnea. Yeah. But this book called Breathe that I read, like I said, about 5 or 6 years ago, talks about all the neat things about training your breath and how people like Houdini could stay underwater for a long time because they train their breath, and how people, all these things. Oh, we're out of time here. All these things about breathing, and one of the things was taping. And I said, what the hell? Because I didn't want to be a mouth breather, and now I am a cured mouth breather. I am a nose breather, and I'm very excited
He's
about
a mouth breather. This anonymous person says, one way to end snoring, endure snoring, get divorced, work for me. That's really a constructive solution. Okay, what's coming up?
Sue O'Connell, media maven, is here with us after the new news. Yeah, she was here filling in for me yesterday. We're very grateful she did. We're going to talk with her about Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski from MSNBC kissing the ring of President President-elect Trump at Mar-a-Lago, and a bunch of other stuff. I can't read my handwriting. Anyway, you're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, broadcasting from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
New Englanders are curious, informed, and engaged, and that's why Champion Circle members invest in GBH with annual gifts of $900 or more. It's just one way to make a big impact. Learn more at gbh.org/champion-circle.
Support for GBH comes from you and Imagine Exhibitions. Harry Potter, the exhibition, is now open. You can experience the filmmaking of Harry Potter through interactive sets, props, costumes, and more. Tickets at harrypotterexhibition.com. And Comcast, offering Xfinity Internet, designed to provide a connection for home networks so everyone can be online at once, even during peak hours. More information at xfinity.com.
We're the Girl Scouts from Eastern Massachusetts. And you're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR.
What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 3 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. MSNBC host Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski are feeling the heat after meeting with President-elect Trump at Mar-a-Lago.
60% over the last decade. We want to know if it's had any impact on you as a pet owner. Maybe opting not for dogs, but maybe more flushable pet options? Or is no vet bill too high for the animal friend in your life? Call or text us next. Hour number 3, Boston Public Radio, 89.7, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. House Democrats are pressing the GOP-led Ethics Committee to immediately release its report into allegations of serious misconduct by former Congressman Matt Gaetz, President-elect Trump's nominee for Attorney General. Today, 96 Democrats sent the panel a letter essentially arguing that the Senate should be able to see the findings of the investigation as part of the confirmation process for Gaetz. Last week, Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson said he would strongly request the report not be disclosed after Gaetz abruptly resigned and the probe effectively ended. Trump has yet to nominate his next Secretary of Education and has said whoever it is could be tasked with trying to close the Education Department. NPR's Corey Turner reports on how or whether that could be done.
The U.S. Department of Education was created by an act of Congress and can only be abolished by an act of Congress. And that, experts across the political spectrum tell NPR, is not likely because of the Senate filibuster. What's more likely, they say, is that a new Trump Education Department could unwind many regulatory changes made by the Biden administration. For example, Title IX, the federal law that protects students from sex discrimination. The Biden administration interpreted the law to include protections based on sexual orientation and gender identity as well, a view the Trump administration does not share and will have the power to change. Corey Turner, NPR News.
President Biden is spending his final day in South America at the G20 summit. He's working to further his climate goals before he leaves office. Here's NPR's Asma Khalid.
Biden has spent his presidency trying to invest in clean energy jobs in the United States. His team says the climate discussion has fundamentally moved into the realm of economics. At the G20 summit, Biden is announcing a $325 million U.S. contribution to a climate investment fund to help developing countries with their clean energy transformation. Biden also met with Brazil's President Lula da Silva to launch a clean energy technology partnership. It's not clear what, if any of this, President-elect Donald Trump will keep. He's vowed to roll back some of Biden's clean energy incentives. Asma Khalid, NPR News.
Our planet's fast approaching a key level of global warming. Several new reports and studies make that point as major climate talks in Azerbaijan continue. NPR's Alejandra Barunda explains why the level of warming matters.
Back in 2015, in the Paris Climate Agreement, just about every country in the world agreed to try to keep Earth from warming up too much. And they set these key goals to keep warming under 2 degrees Celsius and ideally less than 1.5. That's because scientists have told us the risks, they get bigger past 1.5. I talked with Lila Varzovsky. She's a researcher at the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research in Germany.
The immediately tangible impacts is an increase in the intensity and frequency of extreme events.
Starship is the largest.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Striking school teachers from Marblehead, Beverly, and Gloucester made their way to the State House on Beacon Hill today. They gathered on the steps of the State House, and this is how it sounded.
What do we want? A fair contract. When do we want it? Now. What do we deserve? A fair contract. When do we deserve it? Now.
The teachers' unions are asking for higher wages for paraprofessionals, increased parental and sick leave, and safer environments in classrooms. However, school committee members in all 3 districts said some of the teachers' requests are not financially feasible. The group is now calling on Governor Maura Healey to correct the inadequacy of the mediation process and ask for the state to advocate for funding for schools. Cambridge City Council voted unanimously yesterday to draft a petition asking lawmakers on Beacon Hill to allow the city to use traffic cams. The home rule petition, which would be prepared in collaboration with Boston officials, is the latest in a series of attempts by the city to allow for the automated cameras. The call for cameras has been on the fast track since a cyclist was struck and killed on Memorial Drive by an oncoming SUV in September. If approved by the state legislature, it would bring Boston and Cambridge in line with other municipalities across the Commonwealth. In sports, the Celtics host the undefeated Cleveland Cavs at the Garden tonight. Should be a good game. Sunny and upper 50s today, clear sky, and upper 30s overnight. 55 in Boston right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Bradley. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow and Friday, we'll be back again at the library. Next Tuesday, we'll be here with the Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, taking our questions and yours from 1 to 2. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. We're joined now live at the library by local woman Sue O'Connell, commentator on NBC 10 Boston, co-host with Corey Smith of NBC 10's Boston at Issue every Sunday at 11:30. Follow Meet the Press. And watch Sue's segment in the series Commonwealth Confidential, The State of Policing, at 7 and 11 on NBC 10 Boston, where she examines, the public perception of the Massachusetts State Police. I would like to be interviewed. Thank you very much. Thank you. Sue, hi. I forgot to say hello,
There you
Sue.
go. Yes, thank you. Good day. Hi, yes. So we're doing a whole series on police accountability, part of the Karen Reed. Lots of people figured that out that there might be problems, so we're taking a look at it.
Well, another interesting issue, not that we belabor it, even though both the Attorney General, she said she wasn't involved, the governor was not at all concerned about these allegations against the guy who's now the new boss of the state police, the guy from New Jersey.
Yep. The bigger issue, too, is unlike a lot of other states, we don't have an outside entity that oversees investigating the Massachusetts State Police. So those are challenges. But we'll have the whole thing up online, our whole series. So
great.
Tune
Sounds
in.
great.
Thanks. Thank you.
So we have a little breaking news here about the so-called hush money. We call it the election interference case in Manhattan. Trump was found guilty of 34 felonies. The DA in Manhattan has agreed to postpone Trump's sentencing to give them time to litigate his expected motion to dismiss the case. So, I mean, everything, and he's not likely to be sentenced anyway until after the end of his term as the president. So basically,
he's all set.
He's all set.
He's all set.
Yeah.
Yep. No accountability. Gets to be president again, eats as much McDonald's as he wants. You know what? I just want to say this really opens up. Anyone can be president of the United States, though. I just want to say whatever crime you have been alleged to have committed, whatever, I thought the 1980s excluded me from running for office because I worked in the radio and record business. I got to tell you, there's no problems now. It's disgusting. I mean, what are we going to do?
Well, I don't want to belabor this because I do feel that there's a real problem when justice is not done, as is, in my opinion. But I have to say, I occasionally find the argument on the other side of this one fairly persuasive, which is everybody in America knew he was a felon. Everybody. Now, as Marjorie says, some may not believe he was. Whatever it was, they decided, I want him in the Oval Office. I don't want him in a jail cell. And that's, I mean,
get what you get. There
it's
you
pretty
go.
Powerful message, I think.
Don't disagree with you
So
there,
in any
Jim.
case, it appears that there'll be no legal consequences for being an insurrectionist.
That's right.
Trying to pay off Stormy Daniels to make sure it doesn't hurt your re-election bid, doing the documents thing in Mar-a-Lago, or what he did in Georgia. I mean, it's incredible. We're talking to Sue O'Connell.
And that must be why Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough of MSNBC's morning show drove over to Mar-a-Lago on Friday to meet with Donald Trump and kiss the ring. They're saying it's about opening up avenues of communication. But why do they need to open up avenues of communication?
Before you answer that, can we play a little sound from them trying to explain this thing? Here are the two of them. Here it is.
For nearly 80 million Americans, election denialism, public trials, and January 6th were not as important as the issues that moved them to send Donald Trump back to the White House with their vote. Joe and I realize it's time to do something different, and that starts about Donald Trump, but also talking with him.
What do you think?
Yeah, again, I don't know why you have to talk with him to report on him.
I have a complicated answer, as Jim really enjoys when I give the complicated answer. First of all, I'm an employee of Comcast and NBC Universal.
That's right.
They're my fictional colleagues. But I'm going to speak it and say whatever I want anyway, because then if I got fired for saying it, I'd make more money somewhere else. So there you go. But
analysis.
On one hand, I think that if you're going to commentate about people, and it's a commentary show, it's an opinion show, getting information and talking to people with whom you disagree with, or who are running for office, or who are the president-elect, is an important thing. I think freezing someone out and not having the discussion isn't helpful. However, both Joe and Mika have been on the extreme criticism of Donald Trump every single morning for many years.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, they have been calling him a fascist and saying that the world is going to end if he becomes president. And at the same time, as many of us are having discussions about, Donald Trump has said there will be retribution for people who have criticized him, who have been against him. So are media commentators like myself and Joe and Mika on a list somewhere that if he wants to put our company out of business or detain us or audit our taxes or do any of the other things the federal government can do that he thinks is retribution? I imagine that might be something that you think about. But at the same time, their approach to it, which they also haven't told us what they talked about, would be nice. I feel better about it if they went.
Well, it wasn't on the. It was not on their show, which would be one thing. This is
but
going
I understand.
over
I mean, I meet with people all the time who I never say I've met with or I talk with, and I get information. Yeah, I mean, I'm out talking to people. I'm not going to have an opinion about something unless I've actually discussed it with people who disagree with me or are convicted felons in some instance. The problem here, though, is we don't know what the goal of this was. I mean, she's saying that we need to talk to him. Well, why weren't you talking to him before? he didn't just appear. You could have reached out to him before. I've reached out to the Trump campaign to speak with them. They didn't answer my plea, but I've been continually trying to talk to the Trump campaign and other campaigns that disagree with us. My other issue is, I met with Mika for an event she was doing the last Trump 2016, I think in 2015, and it was really when Trump started to turn the corner and say these really obscene things about people while running, and people started to realize he could win, and this is how he was behaving. And I asked her, how do you spend time with him, because at the time they were, when he behaves this way? And she said to me, well, he's a different person on the golf course than he is when he's on TV. So
that is pathetic.
I'm not really sure what their motivation is.
Well, can I tell you, I have to say, I'm with Marjorie on this reporting on what's going on thing. They are opportunists, and I think it's fair to say. By the way, they didn't just talk to him. They went to his New Year's Eve party, and they loved him then.
Right.
Then they hated him. He's a fascist. And now we're open to him again, which, by the way, I'm sort of fine with one caveat. As Marjorie said, the condition for the meeting should have been with Trump and his people. We have to be able to report on what we talked about because we aren't trusted, because we are opportunists. We're for you, we're against you. Now we're not, quote, for you, we're open to you. And so I would have been 100% fine with this if they went back on the next day and say, here's a transcript of our discussion. Or here's a recording of our discussion.
Or they didn't swing back and forth so dramatically. That's the sort of part that's...
Or they had him on the show.
Yeah.
Well, I assume they will have him on the show.
Right, but then confront him with the issues that they've been talking about. Sort of like I always say this to people when they're on Twitter, like on their anonymous account, saying mean things about me. I'm like, well, say it to my face. I have my name on X. Say it to my face. So if they're going to say things about Donald Trump, calling him a fascist, invite him on the show and call him a fascist.
Well, also we could have found out if they repeated some of the things they said as late as November 4th to his face when they were at Mar-a-Lago.
Right.
And again, we don't know. And I assume this may be unfair, but I think it's okay to make this conclusion when they are not transparent. I'm assuming the reason they're not releasing what was said was because people are going to be critical of them. Right. And MSNBC is losing, as is CNN, losing viewers already. And the fear is they may lose more. So in any case,
we'll see.
Can we talk about mean for a second? I really almost have a hard time talking about this. There is the first trans person elected to a seat in the House of Representatives, the woman from Delaware.
Yep.
She's elected by the people, democratically, of her home state. And a minute and a half after the election, Nancy Mace, another Trump sycophant from South Carolina, files tell us what Nancy Mace is doing.
Yeah, Nancy Mace wants to make sure that the bathrooms in the Senate, and remember, there was a time there were in the House, in Congress. There was a time when there was only one gender bathroom, male bathrooms. They had to build out to make female bathrooms, but that's women's bathrooms. That's a whole other issue. She's trying to make it so that you can only use the bathroom of the gender that you were when you were born. And again, the problem I have with a number of conservatives and Republicans is that they don't care how they are impacting actual human beings.
I totally agree with you.
So you can have a discussion about this. You can disagree on it. You can say there should be a third way. There should be other ways to do this, that privacy is an issue. I have a concern about this personally. But to say that your colleague, who is a woman, who is the last person probably in that House, based on what we know, from what Gates has been doing, what Trump has been held liable for. There are sexual offenders all through the House and the White House and the Senate, and they want to keep a law-abiding woman out of the women's room because her biological birth was male when she was born. Does she really think that she's in danger in some way from this lawmaker? No. She's using this person to make a point while she's probably going to go on the floor and say what a great person Matt Gaetz is. So, I mean, the hypocrisy is just mind-blowing.
Well, the point you made is the most important point. It's not really about this congressperson. It's the message it sends to trans people who are the punching bags for the whole damn election season.
Right.
And again, are arguably the most vulnerable constituency
and
in
the
United States of
tiniest
America.
amount of our population, by the way. I know that we talk, and I value all my trans friends, and it's Trans Month of Remembrance here in November, but you're more likely to be assaulted by a lawmaker than you are by a trans person.
I remember the movie Hidden Figures. We talked to Katherine Johnson, wrote the book. That was about the black women, mathematicians that helped did all the calculation of the space race.
They were called computers.
Yes,
Even though
that's
they were
right.
human,
Yeah.
that's how they were described.
And one of the poignant scenes in that movie was when that black woman she wasn't allowed in the bathroom.
Couldn't
and
use
she
the
had
whites
to walk
only.
all the way out of the building, and one of her supervisors said, "Where you been?" She said, "Well, she had to walk like half a mile or something like that. I'm exaggerating, to get to the bathroom." I mean,
and then he changed it, right?
Yes,
and then
he
he
did.
changed it, but he didn't change it because it was an equal. He changed it because he needed her to have a shorter bathroom break to get us to the moon. I mean, it's just
right.
No one is going to assault you in a bathroom that wasn't going to assault you anyway.
So what happens
say.
to this trans congresswoman?
Well, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, this is are people going to be reasonable and look at the bigger picture? And again,
why doesn't it work there that people voted? They voted for her to be their congressperson. Why isn't she treated like everybody else?
Right. No, it's crazy.
So Jen B on YouTube posts, "Guys, I love your show, but you are missing it. Joe and Meek are absolutely correct. We're going to isolate ourselves by criticizing eating McDonald's and being petty." So in that spirit, let's talk about McDonald's. And by the way, I don't want to talk about McDonald's in the way that Gen B is concerned about. I want to talk about, and I mean this, the brilliance of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Here is what RFK Jr., the soon-to-be head of Health and Human Services, he's on the Joe Polish show. Is that how you pronounce the guy's name? I think so. A podcast talking about the food on Trump's plane. Here is RFK Jr.
The stuff that he eats is really bad. It's not, campaign food is always bad, but the food that goes onto that airplane is just poison. You have a choice between, you don't have the choice. You're either given KFC or Big Macs. That's like when you're lucky, and then the rest of the stuff is I consider kind of inedible.
Now, does anybody doubt that Trump did this? I know he loves that anyway.
Absolutely.
To shove it to RFK Jr.
So what Jim's talking about is RFK Jr. Posted,
not
RFK Jr., Donald Trump Jr. posted on Sunday, and I have to say, it was funny. It did crack me up. It was a picture of RFK Jr., Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and poor, what's his name, Mike Johnson,
who doesn't even have a seat,
doesn't even have a seat on the plane, and in front of them is a McDonald's meal for each of them, including a full sugar Coke for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And Donald Trump Jr. posts saying...
The only funny thing he's ever said.
It is pretty funny. He says, "Make America healthy starts tomorrow."
Exactly.
Right? We can all relate to that, right? So we're going to eat this. But the look on RFK's face, as if he is one of those memes that is being forced to do something. And it was so effective that after I co-hosted the show, sat in for you, Marjorie, I went and got McDonald's on my way to NBC 10 because I love a quarter pounder and cheese, as you know. But listen, this is the initiation, right? So as long as you think about people like Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump as crime bosses, you understand every way that they behave. This was an initiation for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Whether or not he actually ate it or not, he had to sit there and pose with the poison that he said. And then he's going to turn around and tell us that, vaccinations are not good for you. It was both funny and sad at the same time.
So speaking about just the beginning, the person who it seems to me from afar that Donald Trump is most enamored of and most comfortable with is Musk.
Yeah.
2 days ago, the Trump whoever person says one of our agenda items is to get rid of the EV tax credit, which is a huge reason why people are able to afford higher end EV. Well, I don't know how high the credit goes, but a lot of people say they can only afford the EV because even the prices are coming down because of the tax credit. So why is that not off-putting to Elon Musk? Because he's so excited to be near so much power that he doesn't really give a damn?
So Elon Musk has I think he hasn't talked to me recently, but I think he's got a much grander plan. I mean, he has an enormous number of contracts with the U.S. government, right? So SpaceX.
Where they're going today, the two of them, right?
I mean, we have basically outsourced NASA to Elon Musk, and he wants to turn that into a commercial enterprise, right? A bigger commercial enterprise. The Starlink satellites. which we are using. Many of our EMTs and our emergency responders use them. They're also what's being used in Ukraine, and we're paying for them around the country. He's got the Boring Company, which is about building tunnels. He thinks he invented tunnels to help get rid of traffic congestion, as well as X, which he's got government contracts all around these companies. So would Elon Musk sacrifice the EV tax credit in order to get all of these government contracts that he has protected? He probably would. I mean, I think the sideshow here, the side conversation is, how long is Donald Trump going to be able to tolerate Elon Musk?
Yeah,
right?
I don't think too long.
You know, he and RFK Jr., they are two very big personalities. They have they have their own style of charisma. People follow them and adore them, and I don't think Donald Trump is going to want to, share the stage with both of them. RFK is disposable, but Elon Musk, if Elon Musk turns against Donald Trump and they have a nasty boy breakup, that would really be something that would be interesting to watch.
It would be very interesting to watch what happens with that. So since the president-elect got almost, I think it was 49.1% of the votes.
49.9 as of 2 hours ago.
Yeah, 49.9. So close to half of the country is voted for him. MAGA hats are appearing in unusual places.
Yeah. So, it's funny because I can think of the first time I saw a MAGA hat. It was on Christmas Eve, and it was at that lovely French restaurant that's over by the Boston Common, next door to the old Four Seasons. We had gone to the Nutcracker, my daughter and I, as we do every Christmas Eve, and then go out and have a fancy dinner. And a man walked in with the hat on, and everyone just kept looking at him. This is like 8 years ago. Things have changed. So now, according to the New York Times and lots of other folks, you can see the variety of MAGA hats, because it's not just red anymore. Right. You've got the white hat that has the red hat on it, and then you've got the black hat. And in New York, they're popping up. There are Instagram influencers who are going to brunch in LA, and they're all wearing their hats and taking pictures of them. And, part of it, I think, is I certainly have experienced people who I didn't know were shy Trump supporters who have been quiet for, 8 years and are now kind of quietly and I don't mean quietly, but in a soft-spoken way, taking a victory lap that Trump has been elected. So some of them are just attention seekers, and some of them have been closeted. So at least now we know who they are.
Jamie has an analysis.
I don't agree with it. You can read it, but I don't agree with it.
The Tesla, we were talking about the EV tax credit. Of course, Tesla is an electric vehicle. So Jamie's theory is that Tesla will survive without the tax credit, but their competitors, Rivian, Polestar, et cetera, barely holding on, will be gone, and only Tesla will remain. I think that's a brilliant analysis.
Yeah, maybe right.
Yeah. What about my Toyota? I want to get a Toyota EV. I don't know where they'll be.
Well, that's really too bad. I'm sorry. That is one of the saddest things I think you've ever said.
I know.
What will you do?
Well, as soon as they have a few more stations, do tune them up.
So when Sue was sitting in yesterday for Marjorie, she badly wanted to talk about Martha Stewart.
Oh.
But I had not seen the Martha Stewart documentary, which you apparently watched 9 times or some such thing. So here's a clip from the trailer of Netflix's Martha Stewart. What's she, 83?
I don't know.
80-something. It's incredible. Thank you. Martha Stewart documentary called Martha.
What does it mean to be the first female self-made billionaire in American history? If there was ever the original influencer, it's Martha.
The hardest thing is to retain cultural relevance as an older woman, and she's done it.
I was considered crazy, but it worked.
Other than, I hadn't heard that till just then, other than Nancy Pelosi, who is an older woman in her late 70s or 80s in America who has, well, they say cultural relevancy, but has such huge relevancy in, I'm sure there's somebody I'm forgetting, but it's a really small number.
Kitty Carlisle.
Kitty Carlisle.
I think she died like 20 years ago. Whatever. Okay, so tell us about the documentary.
So Martha Stewart. So, I love these documentaries where you go back and look at things that happened and how you kind of take them at face value. Man, did she get screwed.
She did.
With a criminal thing?
Going to jail,
it is just disgusting what happened to her. First of all, in the documentary, she is completely unapologetically Martha Stewart. She does not try to pretend to be nice. She hasn't gotten any nicer. She still thinks it's okay that she had an affair during her marriage, but her husband, that was wrong that he had an affair.
Is that really what she said?
Yeah, I mean, it is.
He ran off with one of her assistants, didn't he?
Yes, he did. It is laugh out loud funny how Martha Stewart is, right? She does just not care. And for those younger people who are getting to know Martha Stewart through Snoop Dogg and through her stuff that she's done, at the Olympics and everything, it is this mind-blowing idea that she was the original influencer. And she taught me how to iron, which I've been a big fan of for a long time. I could iron, but I was ironing wrong, and then I learned from her magazine how to iron. But the way
wasn't she on the cover of Sports Illustrated as the
swimsuit
model? In 82 last year.
But she looked great. And her humor is just biting. But the looking back at how she was the first woman to have this billion-dollar company and the vision that she had and the success that she had, if we just look at the business, and then because allegedly she got an insider tip that made her a small amount of money, and she told them to sell the stock or whatever, and then she ended up being convicted of insider trading.
No, I thought she was convicted of lying about the
insider trading, but it was unclear whether or not she had actually lied or not. And they brought all these people on the stand to talk about how mean she was and how terrible she was and how she had treated them poorly. Really? And that's pretty much what swayed people to find her guilty of this lie. And at the time, remember, there were a whole bunch of people who weren't going to jail for doing men, by the way. She was like the only woman to go to jail during this period. And you know who came out and was the one who went after her? James Comey.
Is that so?
Yeah, so James Comey pops up in the middle of this documentary holding another one of his famous press conferences saying he's going after Martha Stewart. So, it is just and it wasn't that long ago. I mean, it's, that's the part that's kind of astonishing. But
didn't she also work with fellow inmates in a wonderful way while she was in?
She was in for 5 months, and she had a few weeks.
How long was she in?
5 months.
Okay.
She had a few weeks of feeling bad for herself, but then she went and she conducted workshops. She taught them how to start their own businesses, and she stayed in touch with them. A number of them appear in the documentary to talk about how they continued relationships with her. But, she started from nothing, basically, built it up, became the first billionaire female executive, self-made, went to jail, had to do a deal with the devil to get a TV show back, and now she and Snoop are just hanging out, going to the Olympics, dressing in equestrian wear.
I love that they were on their riding outfits for the dressage section.
Jane Fonda's 86, by the way. That's
Jane
another
Fonda.
good
I
example.
thought the Spanx lady was the first self-made billionaire, but I guess I'm wrong.
She made a ton of money too. But
Lisa Spanx, I know.
Martha had a whole bunch. She had the media. She didn't have just have the magazine.
So you come on the show fairly regularly. Sometimes you co-host it.
Yes, I do.
You got this thing out there at whatever. It's NBC 10.
Yes, I have another
whatever.
job. Yes.
So you have the Sunday show. You're doing this nighttime thing. You're doing reporting. You go out on the street and talk to people. And I think it's safe to say you have seen, I don't want to overstate this, every single television show since 1986. Is that?
So did you tell Martha? Tell Marjorie what I did yesterday? I remembered it a bit from Johnny Carson about Jay Leno yesterday.
Yeah.
From when was it, Jamie?
1987.
It's all in my head.
Thank
I
you.
watch enormous amounts of television.
Well, there's a lot of good TV
and
on.
I memorize it all.
Yeah.
So
I could get into the Martha Stewart thing. I watched something about Ted Turner the other night.
Yeah.
And Jane,
that was the love of Jane Fonda's life, according to Jane Fonda.
It was. That's another great documentary.
Right. She said, no, he's still alive. Okay. He's in his mid to late 80s.
She takes care of him. Jane Fonda takes care of him.
No, is that really true?
Yeah, she does. She does indeed. She still visits him and cares for him, calls him the love of her life, and brings him food and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so before you go, we're going to talk to the listeners, we hope. The phones are working, correct? Jamie?
Well, we'll see.
Okay, great. So in any case, allegedly working. But we're going to talk to them about people are complaining, understandably, particularly in this election, about the cost of living. One of the things that was almost never talked about was the insane rising cost of healthcare for pets. And almost everybody's got a pet in this country.
And some of our pets eat rodent poison once a week and make me have to take them to the MSPCA.
So your dog's name, what was it? Your dog's name is like Binks? What's your
Maud.
Maud, whatever. So Maud.
Binks.
How much, is there any limit on, if someone said to you tomorrow, a vet
Jim.
said, Maud has a something. We can 100% cure it, and he'll be fine. She'll be fine.
Yeah.
But it's going to cost you $8,000.
So I'll tell you.
What do you do?
Well, it depends. So first of all, I had Inca, who lived to be 18 until last year. So we had Inca and Maud. Before Inca, I had Sam, who lived to be 17.
Wow.
And my approach after a certain age, if my daughter's listening, she should turn off the radio right now, is that watch and wait on everything.
Okay.
So when you get to a certain age of like 11, 12, let's not go looking for problems unless the problems present. And then treat with as minimal care as you can, as long as the pet is healthy. And we have had great luck that we haven't had lots of MRIs.
By the way, your daughter just texted. She says she has the exact same attitude about you. Exactly.
So with Sam, accidentally, someone may have, he was a little terrier, slammed a door on him, and he had the same injury that Kurt Schilling had. And this was 20 years ago. Whatever. And Sam was older, and I went to the vet, and I said, how much is this going to put me back? And they said $7,000 or $4,000. And I went,
bye, Sam.
Well, no, they said, well, he's going to live a lot longer, so go ahead and do it. So, okay, so
you did it?
$4,000. And then a year and a half later, Sam had bladder stones.
Oh.
And that was another $3,000.
Oh.
But Sam continued to live. But, in Maud...
That's old. Did you say 17?
17.
That's
and Inca
old.
lived to be 17 or 18.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so
That's
I don't
very
spend
impressive.
a lot on the MRIs. So when it comes to the $5,000 thing, and I many times I didn't have the money. So, thank God that, I had
Well, a lot
family.
of people don't have the money and put it on a credit card,
Yeah.
apparently,
Yeah.
and are really screwed. Sue O'Connell, we
Thank
love
you.
seeing you. Thank
Good
you
to
so
see you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you very
As
much,
always.
Sue O'Connell. Sue O'Connell
for
is the
herself.
commentator on NBC Boston, co-host with Corey Smith of NBC 10 Boston's At Issue every Sunday at 11:30 following Meet the Press. And you can watch Sue's segment, as we said before, in the series Commonwealth Confidential, The State of Policing at 7 and 11 p.m. on NBC 10 Boston, where she examines the state cops. Thank you, Sue. Okay, up next, we are talking about what Jim just mentioned, the rising cost of pet ownership. Vet bills are way, way up. We ask you often about the cost of groceries, gasoline, housing impacts, your quality of life, but what about the cost of keeping your furry friends happy? You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, Boston University has suspended admissions to humanities and other PhD programs. Striking North Shore teachers are taking their fight to Beacon Hill today. And post-election data show that young males helped re-elect President Trump. I'll speak with internet expert Joan Donovan about bro culture and the misogynistic impulses behind it. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH's All Things Considered.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan. Ranked #1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday. And the Boston Symphony Orchestra, from Duke Ellington to Beethoven and Renee Fleming to Yo-Yo Ma. The BSO is where music lives. You can explore the full season at bso.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back here tomorrow and Friday, and next Tuesday we're back here with the Attorney General, who will be with us from 1 to 2. We read this morning in Marcela Garcia's column in the Globe about the cost of pet ownership, which has skyrocketed over the past few years. Veterinarian visits cost on average 60% more than they did just 10 years ago, according to the federal data. Not to mention that pet insurance is not only unaffordable, but covers almost nothing, and I know that firsthand. And of course, there's the ever-present private equity influence. Lines are open at 877-301-8970 for call or text. We often check in with you about the high cost of housing, groceries, gas. What about the cost of keeping your beloved pet? How much have these costs affected your quality of life? And is there a limit you'd be willing to spend for your animal friend, or is the sky the limit? No price is enough or too much for their love and affection. The number is 877-301-8970. Only 4%, I think I learned this from Marcella, somebody this morning, only 4% of pet owners have insurance. I have insurance for both my kids' dogs. It costs a lot. And I don't want to name the name because I'm not whatever. It covers almost nothing that we submit, and we keep paying this amount of money. And then we learn this morning that, as we said, private equity, a lot of corporations are buying up like half of the veterinary business, and they're saying it's all about the bottom line, which was not the case with wonderful individual veterinarians. So the number is 877-301-8097. Did you ever confront this with Harry the P, best dog from C to C?
No, Harry the P's been dead for a few years.
I know, before he was dead. I don't mean since he was dead.
I had a great vet, and I thought he was very reasonably priced, although I did go in. Harry the P, best dog from C to C, was a little tiny dog, and I was kind of surprised when I had a tooth pulled, and it was $1,000.
Well, how do you say that everything was affordable?
Well, because I guess when they have to do the anesthesia, they have to knock the dog out, and it's
not terribly affordable,
the dog
is it?
there all day long. No, that was expensive. I was kind of shocked about that. But he was a really great vet, and he was not owned by a private equity firm, and that's one of the problems. As a matter of fact, Elizabeth Warren and Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut, 2 senators, are trying to go after these private equity firms because people can't afford it. And as Marcella said, she went to get her dog. What was the treatment she had?
I don't know.
I forget what the treatment she had. But anyway, she said she took her 11-year-old dog for a follow-up consultation, and it cost her $1,200. And for a couple of lab tests, routine profile, check chemicals and enzymes, blood count, digestive panel. But I think that one of our other senators has the right idea about health care costs.
What is that?
Well, this is Kristi Noem. Remember Kristi Noem?
She's a governor.
Excuse me.
She's about to be a member of the cabinet.
That's right.
What did she do?
She's the one that shot her little puppy because the puppy was misbehaving.
Yeah.
And the anonymous texter says when it comes to pet health care costs, Kristi Noem was a true fiscal conservative.
Good line, actually. Here's another one. Somebody, Barry, watching on YouTube, my wonderful son and daughter-in-law spend $500 a month keeping their guinea pigs' hormones in balance. I don't even know what that means.
Wow.
So I'm not sure there's an inexpensive pet out there. And by the way, I was going to say before we take your calls, but that's sort of like an overstatement. Apparently the phones are not working again. Wait, there is one line that is working. So here's the bad news. You can call this number. I'd call it fast if I were you. 617-329-4328. If you're not the first caller, you're going to get a busy. But as soon as the person we talk to hangs up, then you call the number. 617, write it down or do something. 329-4328. And, of course, we will continue to read your text. And before we go to that one line, I've told the story before. And I'm always nervous when I tell a story a second time because Margie says, Jim, you told this story 50 times. Well, can I respond in advance? I'm telling it for the 51st time.
Okay, here we go.
We get a call. We were doing a show, this exact same topic, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And there is a story, I think in the Worcester Telegram and Gazette, saying that a guy who owned a goldfish in Greater Worcester.
He was from Springfield.
No, he moved to Springfield,
he moved to Springfield.
because that's where we met him later in Munson. But in any case, so wherever the hell he was, spent X $1,000. It was either $2,000 or $6,000.
$6,000
to have the eye of his goldfish operated
That's
upon.
right.
Now, of course, we ridiculed the guy, even Marjorie, until there was a call from wherever he lived, and he said, "I am the guy who spent the $6,000 to fix the eye." It's not a goldfish like a little one. What are the big ones called?
I don't know.
There's a word
it
for
wasn't
it.
that big.
Koi? Is that what?
Koi fish, was that it?
Whatever it is. In any case, now the reason we know, I'm going to try to keep this short, that this guy was real on the phone is when there was a tornado in Munson, Marjorie and I were sent out to broadcast live from Springfield. Afterwards, Koi, thank you very much, is the name of the big goldfish. We were sent out live, and as we're walking down the streets of Munson, which appear to be in total ruin, a guy stops us and says, "I'm the guy who called you years ago with the $6,000 eye thing," and he takes us to his house, which is totally gone.
Gone.
And in the basement, there is a fish tank on its side.
That's right.
With water, maybe a tenth of what was in the tank, and what was swimming in the tenth of water?
The goldfish.
The goldfish. So we actually got to meet the $6,000 goldfish. So that's an extreme, but the guy loved his goldfish, he loved his cats, and we want to know where you fall on the spectrum here. 877-301-8970. Hillary in Concord, I gave the wrong number, sorry. Hillary in Concord is on 617-329-4328. Hillary, thank you for calling that number. Welcome.
Oh, my pleasure, guys. This
Thanks.
is so timely.
Good.
I picked up my puppy September 20th. The breeder required that we have pet insurance. She covered the first 30 days.
Yeah.
I'm going to abbreviate the whole story, but he got very sick 2 weeks after I'd had him.
I'm so sorry.
And it turned out that he had Lyme disease off the charts and meningitis.
Oh.
And, yeah, it was... I don't know how parents do it when they have a sick child, but it was very scary. He is now chewing on a box as I speak.
Great.
And very healthy, but I think those bills may have hit $10,000.
Oh, my God.
I think I've paid out of pocket maybe $350.
Whoa.
So,
Well, you have a lot better insurance than I
I'm a
do.
believer.
What?
Right. So it's True Companion that I have.
Okay. Well, that's a great ending to a story. A healthy dog, and you only had to pay $350, which is not nothing, but it's not $10,000 out of pocket. Thank you, Hillary. I'm only speaking from my own experience with insurance, which is it is totally useless. But nevertheless, obviously it worked for Hillary. The number, or the bat phone, as we call it, is 617-329-4328. It's now open, and one person can get through.
Now, several people are saying their pet insurance pays for a lot of things. On the other hand, we have someone who says, I've always had our insurance on our 2 dogs and aging cat. But just this week, when I got the renewal letter, our 15-year-old Siamese cat, the premium for the cat this year was going to be roughly $2,500. We think at this point, despite the cat having diabetes and needing insulin and regular doctor's visits, we are likely to cancel her policy and attempt to pay out of pocket. So some people are very happy with their insurance.
Okay, I want to read.
Nationwide is on your side. Somebody says they're good.
Okay, fine. So Bill texted, I don't say this word on the air, so I need a substitute word. Okay. I once rushed my greyhound to the vet for suspected bloat. He was drooling, panicking, and trying to eat a blanket. When they turned him on his back for an x-ray, he let out a huge, what's another word for that word?
Pass gas.
He passed gas, thank you. And was just fine after that. That was the day of my $500 gas passing, is how he described it, a little more graphically than I. Bill, congratulations. Your dog is fine. The number is 617. I can't believe people are actually calling this number. 329-4328. Deborah in Worcester, welcome.
Hi, Deborah.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Great.
Good. I'll turn this down.
That's okay.
Yeah, so I was saying to the girl and answered, my wife and I had a cat named Charlie, a boy cat.
Yeah.
We had him for a year. And he was only about 7 years old. So when it came to pet insurance, we thought, well, we don't need it. He's too young. Because I've had a cat that lived 22 years.
Wow.
So we brought the cat to the vet over a weekend on emergency because the cat was just really failing. And it was about $3,000. They took the cat and they drained, part of his body. And they said, oh, well, he just has stones. He'll be fine. So we brought him home. He got worse. Next day again, the weekend, we brought him to emergency pet place. And they said, well, we need to operate because what we can do is this, this, and this, and the cat's going to be fine. I said, okay. So they operated. Cat got sicker. He was really weak. They wanted to do a third operation. I said, are you out of your mind? So all in all, it cost us $11,000.
Wow.
Are we happy with that? I mean, I think what they did is they really focused on my wife and it pulled her heartstrings. It's like, oh, well, we have to do what's best for him and we can cure him.
But do you regret it? Do either of the two of you regret it? I know it's a huge amount of money. Do you regret it?
I think I do. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I do. I think we should have known after the first operation when he was failing again that it's probably not going to work out, But, we did what we did. So we tried to save him and it didn't work out.
Deborah, thank you for the call. The number is 617-329-4328. There's an anonymous texter that says, this segment strikes me as a first world problem. I think it's exactly the opposite. It's not a first world problem because if you're loaded, you're going to spend the money. But when you're not loaded and you love your pet as much as a wealthy person does, you're facing a real crisis, a real conundrum.
Part of the reason we're talking about this is because a lot of people adopted pets during the pandemic.
Exactly right.
And they can't afford the vet bills, and they're having to leave them at shelters, which are overrun. I mean, that's really terrible. But some people are saying that one texter is saying he thinks purebred dogs cost way more to keep healthy. He's had 3 dogs, and the mutt cost him the least amount of money than the purebreds. I've heard that a lot too. What are you laughing at?
We have 2 different perspectives here.
Yep.
Anonymous texter says, my husband said he would have fed the goldfish to the cat. That's one perspective. And Ruben says, I assume this is not a typo. My wife and I spent about $40,000 on our dog's cancer treatment. He was 4 when he passed away. We would do it again. R.I.P. Hodor the Great Pyrenees.
$40,000.
Well, how many times have you talked about when you were on the cover of the Herald
said 7,000
with that dog ears, with a picture in the Christmas edition of the Herald or whatever it was? You said that was like the most important quote person to you, thing to you, like in the world. Hire the best dog from C to C.
But I think when you get, I don't know if I would have the dog go through cancer, treatments.
Because you're not because of the money, because you're concerned about how taxing.
I don't think I would spend $40,000. I mean, that seems a little bit crazy. Although somebody said they spent $7,000 on ACL surgery for their dog, and I do have a friend of mine who took their black lab when the black lab was getting old for dog aerobics at Angel Memorial. Can you imagine that? The dog swimming in the pool for their arthritis. Yeah.
Can I tell another story I've told before without you yelling at me?
Sure.
Okay. So my older daughter's dog, we had the dog in Provincetown. And the dog, what's it called? Dew claw, the thing on the inside?
I don't know.
It was running around so fast it ripped its dew claw and it was hanging by a thread. So we took it to a vet. The vet charged $900. And I thought that was okay because the dog was in pain. And I'd say about 30 seconds after we left, the bandaging that was on the thing fell off. Okay, that's the partial end of that story. A year or two later, you'll remember this, we had 3 United States ambassadors to other countries. One was an ambassador to Spain. That is Alan Solomon. One was an ambassador to Denmark, I believe. That was Rufus Gifford, who went on to be the head of protocol for Joe Biden. Well, we're talking to Rufus Gifford, Ambassador Gifford, and I said, where do you live? And he says, part-time Boston, part-time Provincetown. And he says, my husband has business down there, so we spent a lot of time there. I said, what does your husband do? And he says, this is Ambassador Gifford. He said, well, he's a veterinarian. I said, oh, damn, I wish I had met you before this. And I tell him the story. I said, we take the dog in, the dew claw, they put the bandage, charge us $900, and the bandage comes off in 10 seconds. If I had known, I would have gone to your husband's place. And I said, by the way, where is your husband's place? And he said, on Shank-Painter Road. I said, that was the vet. So you got to, whatever.
Embarrassing.
Very embarrassing, thank you.
Okay, we have a text from a gentleman who says, I am not a vet and I have very expensive animals, horses. I will just say this, I don't think we should be complaining about vet expenses as there is a shortage of good vets, mostly due to burnout. Suck it up, people. Animals are expensive.
They are. I mean, here's an anonymous text. Professional koi pond installer here. Some koi can go for up to $30,000. So $6,000 on the surgery is not that bad. The number, again, we only have one line because the phones are down, is 617-329-4328, and I'm told it's available right now.
The key to keeping vet prices low is to ask how much it costs to put them down immediately.
That's not nice.
Well, I mean, I think sometimes
joking.
You do keep the dog too long when you probably shouldn't keep the dog there too long. One of my neighbors has those outside all winter long.
What is it?
One of those koi ponds, and they've got like 3 or 4 of them. No, they got heaters in there, and they've got a thing to move the water around, and it's really incredible. They've got all these flowers growing around. It's very pretty.
Cy Montgomery, I understand, who we love, could obviously relate to a koi. Could you develop an attachment to a koi?
No, I could not.
I mean, really, what is it? You say it's named. Does it come? No, obviously it doesn't. Doesn't do any tricks. I mean,
she has relationships with all these animals. I mean, pigs are very intelligent. I know she has relationships with pigs.
How about koi? I'm not
Obviously
talking
chickens.
about pigs.
Koi could not do it. Could you do a koi?
No.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so either. Or an octopus. I mean, she's a special person.
Well, an octopus is really smart. That's all different. But a koi is a koi.
You want to hang around with an octopus?
I don't want to hang around with it, but if I had
suckers on your
did you read
arms?
Soul of an Octopus?
Yeah, with the suckers on her
How
arm.
about the relationship she had with the damn octopus?
It was unbelievable. It's unbelievable. I have enough trouble with people, dogs and cats, so I'll just leave it there. Horses, I can have a relationship with.
We haven't had on the show. What's the name of that wonderful vet we used to have on from? It's not called Angel Memorial anymore, whatever. She was great. In any case, here's an anonymous
Koi
texter.
fish live 100 years?
No, that's
what
not.
a texter
That is
says.
total BS.
Yeah.
Okay, we do have a caller on our one phone line. Chris in Rentham, thank you very much for calling. Welcome.
Hi. We are 4 weeks out from an ACL tear surgery.
For who? For what?
Yeah. Pardon?
Who had the
On our
surgery?
dog.
Our dog. Okay.
Our dog Kobe, he'll be 5 in December, so he's fairly still on the young side. And we also put a new hip in our other dog that we had before him. It was a little bit cheaper because I'm going back like 12 years or so. But yeah, I have found that pet insurance is useless.
Oh.
And I mean, we look at it as if the dog, if he's not really old, 10, 11, 12, whatever, and they're not in pain. But yeah, it's hard. It's not fun. I know my husband said to one of the kids, "You may not get a meal plan next semester, but
wow.
but Kobe can walk."
Well, that's actually great. And you sound happy and you don't have any regrets. It's great.
Feel that way. Listen to Lulu from Rhode Island. I spent $10,000 curing my cat of feline infectious peritonitis, and it was worth every penny.
What is it?
I don't know, but she cured it, and the cat's fine, and she's very happy about it.
Here's what Zoe says. Zoe's a big animal person, too, our coworker. You actually, this is total crap. You actually can train koi fish to do tricks. They can swim to you, they can eat out of your hand, etc. Does anybody believe that?
I don't know, but we have a couple of vets who are trying to call us, and they can't get through because we only have one phone line.
Can you call us at home tonight, and we'll share with it. What are they? I think Chris in Rentham is hung up, so if you call really quickly,
yes,
617-329-4328. We'd love to talk to a vet.
Yeah, Lisa from Andover is trying to get through.
What does she want to say?
She's a vet. She wants to give
I know.
her
What
side.
does she want to say?
I don't know. She didn't tell me.
Okay.
She said she's trying to get through. Okay. So I think the other thing is, too, people are a lot more... What are you laughing at?
This is great. Anonymous text. Tufts removed my dog's split toenail for free, but they probably thought we were homeless. I had bedhead and my husband had ice cream stains on his shirt. So obviously that's a key to getting a better deal when you go to your veterinarian there.
Okay. Okay, a lot of people are koi pond. We just got a text from a professional koi pond installer.
What do they say?
He says he's the one that says some koi can go for up to $30,000.
Oh, I know. I just read that. I know.
But he installs koi ponds. That's what he does for a living.
But you want to? Oh, you said who has a koi pond in your neighborhood?
One of my neighbors. It's beautiful.
And what is the point of that?
I don't know.
I don't mean to be disparate. What is the point of having a koi pond?
You look at the fish.
What do you do when you look? I mean, you just stand there and look at the fish?
We stand there and look at the fish.
Okay.
We have Jared over Zoom.
We do?
We didn't get the vet. I'm sorry.
He doesn't have a pet, though. Jared, do you have a pet? You've never had a pet, have you?
Well, I don't have a pet because I'm not home enough. But
you have a horse. Don't you have a horse somewhere?
Well, I ride the same horse out in Montana, but I grew up with animals and I grew up with vets. So the deal is, people don't really recognize this, but it's medicine. So it's medicine that costs the same, whether it's for people or for animals. So that's why it's so expensive.
So what's your position on this? If you were to have a dog or a pet or a koi fish and it became ill and it was thousands of dollars, would you spend what needed to be spent to have your companion taken care of?
Well, you have to. How can you not? Unless you know they're going to be living a life of misery.
Well, that's true.
Then you have to. How could you not? You know they would do the same for us. Of course they would.
I don't know if my dog
I don't think the koi would do it.
No,
right?
I don't think so. What do you mean you grew up with vets? Is your father a vet?
My grandfather was a vet.
Oh,
my mother was a vet tech. My sister is a vet tech. Yeah.
Zoe said my cat definitely would not do the same for me. By the way, can I give you an update on a story while we're talking to Jared? We mentioned earlier that the prosecutor in the Manhattan, they call it the hush money case, election interference case, where Trump was convicted of 36 felonies, has agreed to put off the court dates for months and probably put off the sentencing until after Trump's term. Well, here's the latest story, courtesy of Politico. The Manhattan D will fight Trump's efforts to get the case totally dismissed as opposed to postponed. So that is the latest there. So did you tell? Yeah, you
no,
did
what's
tell
on the show?
Yeah, what's on the show?
We are starting in a big way with Renee Fleming, the renowned soprano.
Oh, wonderful.
She's here with the Boston Symphony Orchestra this week. She's performing this highly anticipated piece. It's a rare opportunity to hear her do The Brightness of Light, which is looking at the letters between Georgia O'Keeffe and her husband, the photographer Alfred Stieglitz.
You love that stuff, Marjorie.
I do.
Yeah, go ahead.
You love the paintings. And then...
no, I mean, she likes the relationships between famous artists and their lovers or whatever.
Very
go ahead.
revelatory and carnal. And then we were speaking with Patrick Radden Keefe. Of course, he wrote Say Nothing, Empire of Fame, but his book, Say Nothing, about the troubles in Northern Ireland, has been adapted into what is really a riveting new FX/Hulu series that has just dropped. So we'll talk to him all about that, and then the process of turning that into this television series.
By the way, I know you're talking about the other thing he's written about, as you said. The Empire of Pain is the single best story book on the Sacklers and the pain they have caused the world.
Well,
it is just
his
incredible.
Say Nothing is one of the best books I've read about the Troubles in Ireland, too, from two totally different perspectives, and I can't wait to see the series on TV.
It's
he's
so
really
good.
talented.
Yeah, it's so good. And he's a Dorchester native. So he's one of our own. And it started right here because of the Belfast Oral History Project that's at Boston College.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, Jared, we'll be listening. That sounds like a great show. Jared Bowen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for tuning in today to Boston Public Radio. But you can keep up with us 24/7 way of our podcast or check out our TikTok page. Tomorrow we'll be back here at the Boston Public Library. GBH's Jared Bowen, Boston Globe business columnist Shirley Young, Will Austin from the Boston School Fund, and on Transgender Day of Remembrance, LGBTQ Reisler, Alejandro Carabello will be with us. Our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer John the Claw Parker, our executive producer Jay Bologna, the BPL staff, Maddie Geyer, Bill Francis,